Hey everyone, and welcome to week 2 of our Game Explain Game Club for Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. This time we're covering everything up to the end of Chapter 3, so Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. So there is a lot to cover here, and let's just dive on into with how Chapter 2 begins, or actually how after Chapter 1 ends. It's like a bit of a prologue or epilogue. I don't know what you call these in-between segments involving
intercals? I don't know.
Yeah, that works, sure. So
intermissions.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
So immediately after the end of Chapter 1, after you beat Hooktail, you save the game, and then we then go to a scene involving Princess Peach. A board that seems to be some kind of like spacecraft or some kind of base. We don't fully know where this is yet. And we see her dragged into a room with where she encounters for the first time. I think we're all encountering for the first time, right? Sir Grodus, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Grodus, and we get our introduction to the sirens.
Right, who apparently
Shadow
are
Sirens.
Yeah, so basically the idea is everyone is looking for these crystal stars now. So we're finally getting some background details on what the importance of these crystal stars are, and they will continue to play an important role in the chapters moving forward. So yeah, they're all looking for these crystal stars, trying to track down Mario. And shortly after this little introduction, we then get to play as Princess Peach herself. She's thrown back into her quarters, and we actually get to take control of her for the first time, which harkens back to the original Paper Mario, in which you can also play as her, in a kind of a similar fashion. This time, though, the characters she encounters are a little bit different, or should I say character. So, but first things first, the first thing you do as Peach is you walk into the bathroom, and you can take a shower. She disrobes, takes a shower, and then you can when you return to your quarters, you continue into the next room, at which point you meet Tech, or Tex, I believe. Is it Tech? No, it's Tech, right?
It's just Tech.
Yeah,
T-E-C.
Tech XX, I think, or something. Who is some kind of supercomputer, and he starts grilling Peach, or not grilling Peach, but it's like very inquisitive about Peach, saying how he's been observing her all this time, and it's a little bit creepy. And it then comes out that, or then Peach then suggests that perhaps he's in love with her from how curious he is and how he's been observing her, presumably during her shower too. I don't know. It's a little vague, very creepy. And yeah, so then Peach throws out, well, maybe you're in love with me, and this is why you're feeling the way you are, which is all very odd. This is something this is all very new for like Mario. Like they're kind of like exploring like different concepts involving an AI computer, which is kind of like HAL-like from Space Odyssey 2001. So what's your guys' take on this so far? What do you have to, what's your takeaway from all this?
This is one of those things, like another one of those things that I'm surprised they got away with. I mean, and at least in terms of the bath shower scene. Just because, she literally, as you said, Andre, disrobed. You even hear her unzipping her dress, which,
right.
This is Nintendo. It's Mario. Like
she throws her dress over the shower curtain, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so it definitely is a new frontier for, content that you see in a Mario game. And I just remember the first time I saw that, I was shocked, back when I first played it. And it's still just as shocking today. Like, I hadn't completely forgotten about it, but it was still, I had forgotten about it enough that I was like, oh, wow, yeah. They went there. They did it. And then all the stuff with Tech, I really like. Again, even conceptually, it's stuff that we've just never really seen explored in a Mario game before. And that's why I continue to love this game today, like I did back then. It's really interesting.
Tech is such a weird character. I still don't know how I feel about this whole thing, because he makes it a point that it's pretty obvious, like, when I was watching you, I felt these pangs. Was that in the shower? It's like, it very much indicates that he falls in love with Peach while she's in the shower. Okay, then.
That's kind of the insinuation, yeah. I mean, well, that's more the implication, but I don't think it's as I don't think that's what they were going for.
It's not supposed to be that,
yeah,
but
exactly.
you can read it as that very easily.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, that's how I read it. I was like, this computer's a pervert. But yeah, it's very weird. One thing I did notice that I thought was strange was when she gets out of the shower, just in that bathroom sequence, she has her hair in a ponytail.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then you leave and her hair is back to normal. And I was thinking I was a little, so first off, going back, like, I was thinking at the end of our last episode, I was like, oh, we're going to find out what happened to Peach, and whatever bad thing is going to befall her has already happened. Jackpot. It's definitely on the money with that one. But yeah, so it was interesting because I was expecting that to be a much longer portion of the chapter. I thought like, oh, this is really cool. They're throwing it to Peach and we're going to play chapter 2 as Peach. No. But it was a really interesting introduction, like a really smart way to introduce the X-Nauts in general. Like, you know, that they're more than just, what's the name of the horned guy that looks like Robotnik?
Lord Crump.
Right. Okay. So initially I was thinking Lord Crump was like the leader of all of the X-Nauts, and it becomes very clear that Grobus is much higher up in the pecking order than this guy. So it was a cool way to kind of, you know, see that as Peach. Like, you get to play as Peach being kidnapped, and you get to realize, like, they're not really being bad to her per se. They're giving her freedom enough to kind of roam about.
Yeah,
and
no
do
one's
things.
around. Even there's no guards even watching her besides the robot or computer.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was
Although
really
it is just
interesting.
Tech who's doing that. It's actually really, they don't even know that Tech is doing this as far as I can tell. Like, it's Tech unlocking the doors for her to be able
that's
to
true.
roam around.
Because you do try, if you go to the right before you go to the bathroom and shower, you can't get through that door. It's just locked. So you can't walk, because that was my first instinct was, oh, I'm going to go back the way I came and see if I can do something. And then I was like, oh, well, okay, there's one other door. And I went that way and I was like, it's a bathroom. This is weird. Like, what's the point? So, you know, I just used the shower because it seemed very obvious that it was something you could do. And I had no clue what the point was until that interaction with Tech later on, which to me, again, kind of further drives the point home that something during that shower scene, it was the impetus for him allowing Peach to reach him, because that door was locked until then. So, you know, he had that spark, that realization after the shower. And started unlocking doors for her to come over, and then she used.
It's like Tech just hit puberty or something. Had a realization about herself.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And then, you know, allows her to send off an email to Mario, so at least he's not a jealous type.
That's true, right?
Yeah, that was interesting. He's like, do whatever you want, as long as you don't want to leave.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically Beauty and the Beast. It's like, yeah, you can have free range of the castle, you can do whatever you want, you just can't leave the castle. You're mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more, it seems to be more that Tech wants to understand, like, you know, Tech, I'm the ultimate perfect computer. I have to understand where this anomaly comes from more than like a possessive, creepy, you know, overbearing thing that it feels for her. It's just more like, I need to know what this means.
And to that,
like, what is, yeah.
And to that point, I definitely got some major 2001 Space Odyssey vibes from this, as I already said. The computer eye itself, the camera looks very similar to HAL. And even to the point where they claim they're perfect, Hal would say he's infallible to error. However, like in 2001, Hal also, or both of them, had an error of some kind. Hal detected an error with some kind of ship component, whereas Tech is also having some kind of error. The difference, though, is what's interesting, like interesting contrast I find, is Hal is often said, or is said to be like one of the most human characters in 2001: A Space Odyssey, despite being a computer. Whereas here, we have a computer that's actively trying to be more human, trying to understand love and like what these feelings are. And it's kind of interesting that Peach also, like, with Peach kind of like starting to explain what it is, it also kind of reveals just a little bit about herself, it seems, like maybe how she feels about Mario. But I think it's at this point where she's saying how you want to be like around people. Is that right? I don't want to start complaining with another chapter, but she's explaining like what love is. And you can like read into that a little bit as to whether that's how she feels about Mario. And it also makes me wonder too, though, how earnest she's being, or how genuine she's being in her answers. Like, is she just playing fourth dimensional chess just to like try and get out of here, or is she really fully like just accurately conveying what love is to the computer?
I think she's trying to accurately convey, just because if she was playing 4D chess, she wouldn't be making the side comments. It's like, this is just too weird. Like, she is actively freaked out by this.
Unless she's playing 5D chess, Derek.
Right. And we also, you know, we've never been given any reason to think that Peach has any reason to play 4D chess with Tech, right? Like, there's, you know, Peach has already been a pretty genuine, honest character in general. And there's really no reason that we've been given to doubt that. So I read it as her being very honest and just trying to kind of, you know, figure her way out through the situation. And as Derek said, she vocalizes, yeah, this is weird. Wow, this is bizarre. You're a computer. This doesn't make sense to me. Right. So it seems to me that this is really her genuine thoughts, and that she's, And, you know, we even see that reflected in the fact that initially she's angry. She storms off at first. She's like, you ask all this, you want to know what love is, and you're asking all this of me, but you're also keeping me kidnapped. I can't do what I want. Like, that doesn't seem right. Like, screw this. So it's not as though she plays along immediately either. So right. I read that as just her being completely natural and genuine.
I think so too. I agree with that. So yeah, it's just kind of fun to get that inner insight a little bit into Peach through how she's conveying things to this computer, and I imagine that will continue as we go through the game. We'll see. We have a few comments here from the chat. Straw Hat Ninja says, I was shocked when you could do that, being taken a shower as Peach. Who, by the way, she sings the Mario, she sings like the World 1-1 theme, the overworld theme, if you listen.
Yeah.
Which I think might be a callback to Mario RPG, where I think Mario would do the same thing when you took a shower in that upscale town, if I recall correctly.
Oh, right.
We have a few other comments. Several people comment on the fact that there's a nude Peach in the game, which, even though they don't see anything, just the implication that characters can get naked in the Mario universe feels weird, doesn't it?
I think I can get away with it more because it's paper.
That's true, too. I guess it'd just be completely blank, right? Protoman says, a convenient timing that the door is open after Peach takes a shower, and also comments that Ponytail Peach is way better, which I agree.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a bummer that she changed back to her normal hairstyle.
Agreed.
That's her look when she uses the fire flower in 3D World.
Yep.
So, right, yeah.
As a reminder, if you want to interact with us live during our recordings, you can. You can back us on Patreon at the Game Club VIP level for just $5. You get all kinds of cool perks, like being able to interact with us live, you get early access to the final show, and tons of other cool things. So let's go ahead and move on to the next part of what I guess is the interlude for Chapter 2, where we play as Bowser for the first time at Bowser's Castle. We find out that he is trying to track down Peach. Of course, what else is he going to be doing? She's apparently been sighted in Rogueport, so he's playing like he's way behind the conversation. Poor Bowser. He's lagging behind. Anyways, while you're playing as him, you're going through the corridor, and you can check out like the statue bust of Bowser himself. And he's always, if you look at each one, he comments on how handsome he is and like what a great looking guy Bowser is. And I love seeing, even though it's pretty shallow. I love seeing these inner glimpses of these characters once again. Like, we're seeing Bowser how he sees himself, and that's hilarious.
I did not know you could do that. I always talked to the minions, but I never looked at the statues.
Even this time?
Even this time, I never knew that one.
Yeah, it's a fun little
No, like, it's just 3 different versions of him just talking about how handsome he is. It's great. Like, he's got the biggest ego, and that's one of the most endearing things about Bowser anyway, right? It's just he's just egotistical to a fault, and he just loves himself shamelessly, and we see a lot of that reflected in this game that we would also see in future Mario RPGs, like Bowser's Inside Story, for example.
But not Sticker Star, where he didn't talk at all.
But not Sticker Star. Yeah. Nope. Yeah.
I do like the one where the one troop is telling a joke, and the other one's like, no, cut it out. And then it's like, no, finish. Let's hear this hilarious joke.
Yeah.
Like, you can just see the overbearing aspect of him as a boss,
right?
But were you thrown off? Like, you obviously predicted playing as Peach or learning about Peach, Steve. Did you expect Bowser?
I didn't. I was not expecting him to be playable in any way, shape, or form in this game. So it was cool. Like, I was really hyped, and again, it threw me off because I was like, oh sweet, now we play as Bowser for this chapter. That'll be really cool. Mm-hmm. Like, because one of my favorite moments in Odyssey is where you possess Bowser and you're towards the end game. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I've always enjoyed playing as the bad guys in established franchises like this, and Bowser's one of my favorite villains. So I would love to play more as him in this game. The first thing that threw me off though was how much I hate his walking animation. Like, he just kind of shuffles his little feet, right. And I was like, there's something that seems incredibly frail about the way Bowser walks in this game. I was expecting him to take like big hulking, like heavy steps, But that said, I really loved the writing of this part of the chapter, because there's the part where what's her name? The
Cammy.
I want to say they call her a
Cammy.
hag or something.
Yeah, they do,
Cammy
but yeah,
Cooper.
Cammy, yeah.
Yeah, so when she comes out and she's talking to Bowser, and then she like gets off track, and she's like, I can't remember, does she ask him if he likes chicken?
Eggs.
Eggs, right? She's like, "Do you like fried eggs?" And the answers are equally angry. There's one that's like, "Of course I do," and then there's another one. So of course, whenever somebody asks me about food in this game, I reply in the affirmative. And she's like, "Oh, well, I was thinking of taking everyone to go have a picnic." And he's like, "What are you talking about? Why? This is why we always lose." And so I thought it was really funny.
Say no to the eggs? Because I didn't.
I did. I think she actually says the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I got that same response.
Yeah, there's a few dialogue responses like that where it'll either branch off or it won't do anything different at all. And I do kind of like that you have no idea going in, whether it matters or not, your choice. But yeah, it's always fun to explore, what they might say in response.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the thing I think is funny, though, is where she wants to take everyone on the picnic is actually further down Mario's trail. She wants to bring them closer to Petalburg. What was to the meadows that you end up in right after you leave Rogueport. So technically they would have been closer, on Mario's trail if they had gone on this stupid picnic. But he ironically tells her that that's a stupid idea and, blames her for all his failures, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This chapter actually had a few moments where I just busted up laughing at the writing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There's definitely some really funny moments in this chapter, especially the first time through. Correct me if I'm wrong. This might be the last time we see Cammy.
I don't remember.
I don't want to say either way.
You're talking in this game or period?
No. I mean, period. After this game, I don't think she reappears. Kind of like the Toads War situation.
Is this her last game? I know, yeah. Well, maybe it is.
Yeah, well, Toadsworth did appear in spin-off titles after it.
He did, but Cammy never, they just sort of reverted to Kamek.
Right.
Rather than
right. I mean, she is a spirit at least, I guess, in Smash, but that doesn't really count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't. So are a lot of characters.
Yeah, right. There's something else about this segment before we move on, and Andre, I'm sure you saw this too since you checked the statues like I did, and Blind Man V2 just noticed or mentioned this in the chat as well. But if you check, I think it's the rightmost statue, Bowser says something like, "I found the Bowser Jewel." And it's like a weird fourth wall breaking moment that, it doesn't really make sense, and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to glean from that. What about you, Andre?
Yeah, I don't know either. It was just a weird little thing there. I agree. Was it like a fourth wall break? I'm not quite sure what that was about.
Yeah, I don't know if it was supposed to just be like making fun of a JRPG trope where a character will say, "I found this," or the game says you found the blah blah. But yeah, it seems like it was supposed to be some sort of fourth wall breaking joke, but I don't know if it totally landed. It was weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I agree. I wonder if there's been conversation about that elsewhere. What does it mean?
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and so following this, Bowser he busts through his own castle wall on a chase for Peach, which we won't see more of until later. So let's go ahead and return to Mario and the crew, who are leaving. What is it? Petalburg,
yeah.
Petalburg and Hooktail's Castle.
By the way, I looked it up, and the Bowser Jewel is just an applied item. It's just a joke. There's no references there whatsoever. It's just haha.
That's what
RPG
I
trope.
Figured.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, yeah. So anyways, so we return to Mario. He returns to Rogueport. Basically, there's not a whole lot going on here. He goes to the thousand-year door back underground. It reveals the next location being Boggly Woods. At which point, Mario will shortly then encounter one of those little, what are they called?
The Punia.
Punies.
The Punios.
Yes.
The Punies.
Punies, yeah. Which will lead.
I can see why Steve was cracking up already.
Yeah, yes. I never once in my life thought I'd hear them called Punies.
This is a very mature game, okay?
Yeah.
So,
man.
So the Punies. So the Puny leads Mario and the gang to. I don't think I'm skipping anything important, right? I think it's.
I mean, unless we want to talk about a lot of the stuff that you can do, because there's actually one thing I did do in here. There's a couple of things I did in here that are, I think, well worth talking about at Rogueport.
Yeah,
in my notes,
agree.
Because one of the big things I did is when you there's a new pipe you can access within the sewers that allows you to go into the background where you can get your fortune told and get a new bonus. They basically a new curse. Did anybody do that for this?
Oh, I did.
Okay. I did, yeah.
I did too.
I initially thought that's where I had to go. I did
No.
the special curse for 50.
I bought the
Yeah,
cheapest
that's
one for
it.
5.
No,
I did the normal
50.
one, actually.
It is. I did 50 as well. It is so useful because you can get better defense, you can get better attack, and you can get experience bonuses where you finish a match and it'll actually double your experience that you would have gotten. Which in a previous playthrough during my stream, I actually got one of those bonuses, the experience bonus, to activate after a boss.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Nice.
That happened-
Nice.
That happened with you, Steve?
That happened to me at the end of this chapter. So
Oh,
I
that's
think the boss
amazing.
normally gives you 30, and I got 60, and it leveled
Yeah.
me up right away, which was
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
That curse is amazing and should always be applied.
So I got the normal one, and I got the same effects, but I'm guessing maybe they come up less often because I didn't see that the effects come up that often. So I'm guessing maybe it just has to do with the frequency.
I think it's a frequency. Although I haven't seen the
Yeah.
double
Yeah.
experience yet, so maybe it does affect which ones, which type you get. But yeah,
Right.
so apparently I'm playing in hard mode then. I went for the cheapest course. It doesn't pop up that often.
Nice.
But I like it because it's forcing me to think a little bit more. I guess it's forcing me to be even more strategic in my choices, especially
Right.
because I'm currently resuming my purely badge point run from Paper Mario
no.
64.
Oh, no.
And that continues up to
Oh,
the end of
man.
Chapter 3. I have not chosen anything but badge points yet, so we'll touch more on that when we get
Oh,
to Chapter
wow,
3.
okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun so far. But
I think what's interesting about like the structure of this game, and we'll see this going forward as well, is that it's not just like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Like you actually have a whole area or whole time you're in Rogueport, and the new abilities you got from the previous chapter allow you to explore what you start realizing is this labyrinth behind, underneath Rogueport, and it just goes deeper and deeper. And I like how they drip feed you abilities such that you can just explore a little further each time. Every time you go back to Rogueport with something new, you can explore a little further underneath Rogueport, and that becomes its own quest almost, like its own side quest, apart from all the actual side quests at the Trouble Center, which I did all of them. Did you guys do every Trouble Center quest you could?
No, because I never went to the east side and I didn't discover it until chapter 3, so I'll get to that there. But yeah, I did not do any of the Trouble Center stuff, and I was like, and I saw that, I'm like, crap, I'm gonna have to do that next time. So I'm gonna have a long line of mini game side quests to do when I get back to the game.
I've started
Yeah,
a little
same.
bit of the Trouble Center quests.
I actually did all of them. I just like knocked them all out, and it's funny. That was probably the first time during this new playthrough where I feel the game shows its age in certain ways. And of course, I still really like it. But if you do all the Trouble Center quests at once, at least, there's so much backtracking, going back and forth to like Petalburg and
Right.
all these other and even further up down the line, you'll have to go to other places. But it made me want a fast travel option so much. I'm like, oh, I have to go to the Rogueport sewers. I have to go to the pipe. I have to go to Petalburg. It's just
Now-
some of the quests take place in Rogueport, and it's not that. It's fine. But,
You say you have to. You don't, though. They're, for the most
well,
part,
you don't.
optional.
You don't.
Yeah.
So you
Of
kind
course,
of inflicted
but,
this upon
I
yourself.
like rewards.
You
I
kind of
like
did.
rewards.
You kind of
You
did.
have to work for them.
I got those 4.
Definitely.
And then I was like, wait a second. I know what's coming up. I can do this a little bit faster if I just wait until until chapter 4. So I'm going to wait to do them then. And that's what I ended up doing. But they are useful. I mean, it's nice. It's one of the best ways to earn extra coins. Which, did you guys talk to the mouse at the docks on the east side?
Yes, but I haven't invested yet.
I haven't either. I needed more coins.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay.
I need to do so as well.
But actually, speaking of the docks, there is an NPC there that I wrote a note down for because it just made me laugh out loud. There's a toad where he says something like, life just sucks. I've given up on all of my live streams. All I do is stare at the sea all day, just waiting for a ship that never returns. Life stinks. And it's like, what happened to you? Who hurt you? What happened in your life, man? I need to know. I need to know your story.
That poor toad. There are hints of backstories of a lot of these characters that you never get the full details of, but I kind of like that too. Like, it lends depth, and I think the mystery of it all makes it feel more intriguing than it would be otherwise if they filled in all those details, in most cases, not every case, obviously. Real quick, it just reminded me of one thing I actually want to touch on. Back in Petalburg, if you talk to that little toad again, who was playing Fire Emblem before and then moved on to Paper Mario on the 64, he's now upgraded to the sequel to Paper Mario on the GameCube.
Right.
Somehow, he's playing the
I love
very
it.
game you're playing right now as you're interacting with him. How does that work? How does
it's
that
the
work?
Spaceballs logic.
Yeah. He said he's just a small ways in. So what happens if he surpasses you? Does that just break the space-time continuum? Like,
Yeah,
the one writing
it's just
the
one of
guide.
those weird, like, you can't think about it too much, or it just really messes with your head.
Yep.
And that does remind me, just because of another NPC interaction that stands out to me, and I'm sure you were going to cover this too, Andre, but Luigi. This is
He's
your
here,
first
first
chance
time.
to talk to Luigi in Rogueport, and you find out that he's on his own adventure. And it draws interesting parallels between, his own and Mario's adventure. And there's a lot of funny stuff in this whole thing. So I think it's like, he has to go to the Eclair Kingdom?
Yes.
It's
the Waffle Kingdom. He's rescuing
The Waffle
Princess Eclair, who was kidnapped by the Chestnut King, and in order to find her, he needs to find the pieces of the marvelous compass, which points to the next one. And they know Eclair has one of the pieces, so he has to keep collecting them until he rescues Princess Eclair. And oh my God, his stories are so good. You did talk to Luigi and get this story, right, Steve? Please tell me yes.
Yes, I did. And one of the things I loved the most about it was the classic, like, early 2000s area disrespect for Luigi. Like, Mario just immediately falls asleep once Luigi starts talking. And so you're reading through this story, which it basically is, like Ash said, just an alternate version of the same adventure you're on, and Mario could not care less. So I always loved, like, in that era, Nintendo seemed to try to make it seem like Mario had some kind of grudge against his brother, like whether it's him, stomping Luigi's foot in Mario Party, I think it was, or what
Right.
have you. Like,
Or-
there's just some kind of weird, almost like malicious rivalry between the two.
in the first Mario and Luigi, Mario would literally hammer Luigi into the shape of a surfboard and surf him around. Surf around on him. And I believe that did precede this game. We discussed this before. I should have looked it up. I think it did precede it, but I could be
It did
misremembering.
by
Yeah.
a year.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in fact, there's actually a good reason to suspect. Actually, the game kind of confirms that, but that will be a Chapter 3 spoiler.
Yeah, but it was interesting because seeing Luigi, I was hopeful that he'd join our party, like that he'd
Right.
become part of things, and I don't know, maybe he will later on. I doubt it, but it's really cool to kind of run into him and see what he's up to, because he's so well fleshed out in this game. Like, he has a lot to say, whereas Mario's just kind of mute. So it's really interesting to hear what Luigi's doing while all this is going on. When I read that first story, I was like, man, that would have made a cool game too. Like, I would have liked to play that.
There are so many people begging for that Paper Luigi game.
It would be so
Yeah.
fun. Like, they could. I mean, they don't have to go full scale with it. Like, if they want to do something smaller, like maybe not even a full RPG, make it maybe closer to Super Paper Mario. They want to just give us something that shows us what Luigi was doing
It
in
would
that
make
kingdom.
a wonderful extra if they ever did remake Thousand Year Door.
Yeah, that's
just
a good
added
one.
in kind of like the epilogue for Xenoblade.
Right.
Just
Oh, yeah,
pop that
absolutely.
in,
Or, well,
it'd be
like-
perfect.
Well, actually, ToonJ723 in the chat actually just touched on that. Like, if they remake it, they could do it. They could add a Luigi story mode like they did with the Bowser Jr. stuff in the
Right, that too.
Bowser's Inside Story remake, and same thing with the Superstar Saga remake with
Except
the
good.
Minion stuff.
Hopefully
Except
good.
good, exactly.
Hopefully
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
One other interesting thing about the Luigi, one interesting connection, I suppose, is going back to Paper Mario 64. So, 64 spoiler, sorry, Steve. Is that you would find Luigi's diary in that game, and back then it offered an insight into Luigi, which came out just before Luigi's Mansion, which was interesting, and it was talking about how scared Luigi was of in general. I think I forget the exact details. So I don't want to overstate what it was, but it was talking about how Luigi's kind of timid in general, and how I think he might have been jealous of Mario in his adventures. And now Luigi gets his own chance. He has his moment in this game to live up to, or to start doing what he wanted to in the first game. So that's kind of fun, an interesting little parallel there that we if you played both games. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is really interesting to track the Luigi love over the games, and how he just gets gradually more and more respect.
right, and these games are kind of probably what helped shaping Luigi's personality too. Since then, the RPGs are the first ones that gave him any kind of personality, and then we had Luigi's Mansion kind of within that same time frame as well. So before then, Luigi's kind of a blank slate. So this is really kind of like what started doing Steel Luigi with any kind of personality, which is fun. Real quick, Straw Hat Ninja says Andre going all badge is a pro strat. Be proud. Heck yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's fine. Actually, speaking of, strats, did any of you guys take advantage of the Shine Sprite place?
I did
Yes.
not.
I did. You should, Steve. It's
Yeah,
kind of
really
essential.
you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
I
time
need
you're
to
in
find
Rogueport,
it. I actually have no clue where it is.
It's right next to Frankly's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I should
go into
open
the
more
place next to
doors.
Yeah. Go into the place next to Frankly's, talk to them, and I guess we have to talk about it since the rest of us upgraded. But
Yeah, it's fine.
that's how you power up your partners. You get 3 Shine Sprites, you trade it in, and they get more powerful. They get more HP, they get a brand new attack, and their attacks become a little stronger.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So who
and
did you-
it's very helpful too.
Who did you guys choose to upgrade?
I'm
I
pretty
mean,
sure
you
I
say
chose-
that as if there is a choice. Goombella, obviously.
Yeah, Goombella.
I totally went Coops. Goombella is purely a tattle option for me. I go Coops the rest of the way.
Oh, no. Second option for Power Bounce.
Right. Oh no. Well, she has multi bounce, right? I think she gets multi bounce,
Well,
or is it?
it's the same thing. It's called Power Bounce.
Or
for Mario, where
multi-bonk.
you can
Oh, okay.
bounce on them as many times as you hit the A
Right.
button. So,
Yeah,
but anyway,
Right.
I like Coops for it because it allows them to attack multiple enemies in a row, which is handy early into the game. Even though it's kind of a weaker move, I think. I found it to be useful. So, yeah. All right. Well, anything else in Rogueport we need to touch on before we move on?
Looking through my notes, the only thing I got is the star pieces that you can trade for badges and the other little Easter egg where the sign near the shop in the main
Right.
area has both stuff in the front and in the behind that changes between each chapter. And then I finally did a little bit of zesty cooking since I got
So
the
that sign returns also from Paper Mario 64, and
Right.
yeah, it's fun. It's always fun to read the backside. That's where you get the more the more off-color notes from people in the game. So that's always. I think what's the first one? Is it from the thief rat character?
yeah,
Or-
Miss Mouse. I think it
Mouse,
might
yeah.
be from Miss Mouse. So, yep.
And you mentioned Zest's cooking, Derek. Do you guys, or have you guys taken advantage of the cooking that much so far? I haven't personally.
I did a little
even
bit,
I did it a little bit, and then I remembered that you can't skip the animation, and it's like 10 seconds or so each time, and I just got really tired of it really
So,
fast. And
the odd thing is,
Yeah.
at least at this point, I forget if it changes. You don't mix ingredients; you just give her an ingredient, and she bakes something up. And I like that because I can't screw it up, like in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
it's like
I
here's this
still
one thing-
screwed it up.
What?
I gave her an item that couldn't be really cooked, so it ended up being a mistake.
Oh no! Wow, you can't get Breath of the Wild in here.
Yeah.
Remind me to never eat Derek's cooking in real life. Then
right.
It's a good policy.
I gave her a couple mushrooms, and she returns. I forget what she returns, but basically restores a little bit more HP and some flower points at the same time. So yeah, the only thing you're losing in most cases is just time, as Ash is touching on. But Ash, 10 seconds for you is nothing compared to the amount of time you spent running back and forth for that trouble center, those trouble center quests.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, between doing all those and
It
cooking,
adds
I'm just
up.
like,
That's
no,
true.
I don't have time
Yeah.
for this. Yeah.
You get the better stuff from her once you get the ability to combine 2 items, so it's not a
So-
huge deal at this point.
It is still, we've touched on this before, so I don't want to dwell on it, but it's still impressive to me how much there is to do in Rogueport, even just to the extent that we have accessible up to Chapter 2. When it doesn't really, like, if you look at it, it doesn't look like much, but there's a lot packed in there. Where there's, like, little nooks and crannies you can discover, and it's just fun. For some reason, I find the rewards in this game to really feel more meaningful than in most. Like, exploring is fun in this one, especially in Rogueport.
I'd agree
Yeah.
with that.
All right.
Definitely agree.
Well, speaking of exploring, one of the things that you do is you do return to the sewers, at which point you come across the puny, who will eventually basically lead you toward your next destination, being Boggly Woods. So I lost my notes, so I forget the exact order of events, but this is where you encounter, for the first time as Mario, the sirens. Is that what they're called?
The Shadow Sirens.
The Shadow Sirens.
Right. And I forget all their names, but like they have Vivian, they have the large.
Beldum is
Vivian,
the
Maryland,
oldest
and
one.
Beldum.
All right,
Yes, that's it.
Perfect. There we go.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of let Mario. They're actually annoyed with Mario for even bothering to stop to talk to them. They're like, "Get out of here! Like, what are you doing?" But then you will encounter them later on, at which point they realize their mistake. But before that, you realize that the puny's leading you back to their tree, their home tree. At which point you discover like a new door that's been installed into the tree, and it's locked down. You can't get in. There's apparently a secret entrance somewhere, but you don't know how to get in. So it's at this point that the puny leads you to someone who may help you, who lives in the woods, and this is I don't know what more to say. Does someone else want to take it from here? Someone else who can.
There's a setup for one of the jokes I really enjoyed in this chapter that happens at this moment. So the puny is like, oh, there's a secret entrance to the tree. I can get in if I can just find it, right? And he's saying like, oh, and you go up kind of the side to one of the roots of the tree, and then the puny mentions to you like, oh, there's something invisible. There's no way we're going to get it. He goes, it's not like there's just going to be a sign that says secret entrance above the entrance. And then you set off, and later, like you come back and you end up getting what you need to remove the invisible thing. And right there above the entrance is a big lit up sign that says secret entrance.
Yeah, it looks like a giant neon sign.
Yeah.
It's got like the lights going around it. It's
Which
so great.
I thought was so funny. Like it didn't even hit me because, of course, like that just seems like normal dialogue that you would write in. And then, of course, like bam, it's exactly what he said it wouldn't be, and that kind of had me laughing as we got in there. But from there, you realize that you need help. I'm so horrible with the character names in this game.
It's Flurry.
Yeah,
there we go.
It's
Right,
Madame
Miss
Flurry. Yeah,
Madame Flurry. Right. So you need Madame Flurry's help, and then the funny thing is, then they cut to her house and. They basically intimate that she's in some kind of distress in her home and you don't know what's going on. But Puny or Punio, that's his name. Punio tells you that she lives deep in the furthest section of the woods. And so I'm thinking like, God, we're going to have to go on this long walk just to get there and fight a bunch of stuff. It's like 2 screens over.
Yeah, but you do find lost
It's
stuff
not
along
far
the
at
way.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I don't know if Chapter 2 makes the best first impression, especially if you do what I did. Because interestingly enough, I didn't remember a lot of this chapter. Like, a lot of it was rediscovering it for me because I just didn't remember a lot of it. And so I actually went to her house first before I went to the Great Tree. And so if you do that, she's not home. There's nobody home. So then I went back to the Great Tree, saw that, oh, yeah, you need the secret entrance. So then you go, what Steve described, you go back. She's in distress. Then you have to go get her necklace, which means you have to go backtrack across the woods again, fight the Shadow Sirens, then go back to her house again. And then she finally joins you. And so if you make that mistake like I did, or, there's really no way you could know it's a mistake because you don't know you're supposed to go to the Great Tree first, I don't know if it makes the best first impression because there's a lot of back and forth, backtracking across the woods. Until you get to the actual meat of Chapter 2, which is inside the Great Tree. But I was surprised by just how many times I had to trek across the woods.
That's interesting. For me, I didn't really have that issue. I felt like I was kind of handheld over, like, to the Great Tree. Like, I felt like Punio, kind of sufficiently, at least for me, described where I needed to go. Because I was like, oh, I need to go to this tree. Like, that's the Great Tree that they all live in. And ended up finding my way over to it. And, to me, the progression seemed fine. Like, I didn't have any issues figuring out where to go. Like, I never passed up the tree. I didn't, like, I had it, to me, it communicated to me very clearly that I needed to go to this tree first. And then from there, then we see the house. And I'm like, okay.
It's
Right.
better set up for if you do follow the instructions, because if I did something similar to Ash where I knew I had to go to the tree, it was very clearly said, hey, come this way, but I'm like, oh, there's this path to the right where there might be secrets and fun things there that I might not have to visit.
I think that's what my thought was. Yeah,
it's that extra thing. And so I did all that, saw Flurry's house, was like, whoops, that's right, I got to do that first, and I immediately went back to the tree.
So. What's funny is I think I tried that too, but I got hung up on the secret. Secret, I guess. I don't know. Not to confuse it with a tree, but there's like the thin passage you can fit through to continue onward in the right path. To get to the house.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even find. I didn't even know about it. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm stuck. I can't continue this way, so I go back to the tree.
Oh.
So that kind of forced me to go in the direction I was supposed to. But I completely forgot how to get past that section with the airplane that you eventually fly over the wall at.
That annoyed me.
Oh yeah. Oh, the airplane part. Oh, right. Because it looks like you should be able to make. Like, why? It's like, why can't I fly the ledge? Right? Is that what hung you up at?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had Goombella with me, and I used Tattle, which I don't do often enough when I'm not in battle. I don't use tattle enough. And she said something to the effect of like, oh, we need to use airplane mode to fly over to that ledge, but or to fly over there. And then she says, next to the ledge, it looks like there's a tunnel. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the way I was reading it, I don't know why, but in my mind, I just took it as like, oh, they mistranslated that's a freaking pipe right there. And so I was like, it's just poorly written dialogue. And then I realized, I was like, it can't be that bad and that wrong. And this is so very clear. But I tried it 5 times before I realized it's not possible. You just can't do it. And so I literally just walked along the edge of that wall until Mario popped in there. But I think it could have been more clearly marked out, made just a little bit more visually obvious that there was some kind of entrance there. Now, I mean, it could be that, I'm not playing on the greatest setup. I've got my GameCube hooked up with a $10 HDMI cable. So maybe the visual quality is degraded a bit, because I can tell from the way it looks on my TV versus other videos that I've seen of the game, it definitely doesn't look nearly as clean as it can. So maybe there's some detail lost in my video signal, but to me anyway, the way I was playing, I just could not see that entrance at all. And then Mario just kind of popped into it, and I was like, oh, okay, there's definitely something hidden in here.
It's just hard to see. It's just hard to see, period, I think. Yeah,
I mean, the aesthetic of this area is that there's a lot of dark spots, a lot of black and white and blue. And so it just seemed just to me, it seemed like a solid black wall. Right. And then, I could see Mario ever so faintly through it once he went in. And I was like, oh, okay. Then it made sense. But yeah, I don't think it was a great puzzle. Mm-hmm. It didn't hang me up for too long. I just thought that maybe it could have been made a little bit more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the look of Boggly Woods, what do we think of it? You guys like the black and white aesthetic that they're going for?
Well, real quick, Protoman says, also, gotta say, Boggly Woods' environment and music is so amazing. So I will say it's definitely atmospheric. I think I think that's something that extends to most of the game. Especially in comparison to Chapter 1, this chapter definitely feels unique. It doesn't feel generic at all. Despite the woods being a somewhat generic setting, they make them feel and look distinct here, and I like that. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of this chapter itself in general, and there's more reasons for that coming up, I will say they totally killed the aesthetic on it, in my opinion. And you're not in the first area for even too long either, so it doesn't really wear you out. At least it didn't wear me out. And yeah, the music works great. It makes it feel it lends the whole thing a little bit of an unsettling feeling, and it makes me wonder why Flurry even wants to live here. It's pretty, but it's also a little creepy or a little just unsettling.
But
it's
the
very ethereal,
are so adorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very. I love the look of it. There's a lot of contrast, a lot of brights. I love when you're jumping up in the white flowers up and down. The flowers come out and kind of poof away in the wind, and it's a really cool visual effect. And yeah, it's very ethereal in its atmosphere, and it's unique despite, as you said, Andre, the woods being kind of a generic setting in most games. This delivers kind of a very unique interpretation of that setting, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, aesthetically, I really like this area. I like the music, too. I think it was really cool in and of itself as an environment. I don't like the enemies in it. It's because, so when I look at the grayscale piranha plants or those spiders you encounter later on, they look like they belong in something that would be more themed after a 1930s cartoon or something. They don't look like they, because if you have Goombella tattle on the piranha plant, it says oh, this variation of piranha plant has evolved to fit in with this environment. And I'm thinking, nothing in this environment is gray. Nothing looks like they stand out really bad in this area. It would have been cool if they were white and black and blue, kind of to match the aesthetic of the area. But I felt if there was almost a section in the game that was more themed after old school cartoons or old timey actual grayscale environment, that they would make a lot more sense there.
It's the kind of irony, or it's probably not irony, but I guess the funny thing, I suppose, about those characters is they look like they're from Color Splash, which is kind of a divisive Paper Mario game. But yeah, where elements often be unpainted, and it kind of looked like it should have some reason for that here. But yeah, to your point, Steve, I don't really know why they're uncolored. I guess that's just how they look here. It just feels weird. It kind of is out of place. And also, I hate the piranha plants. The piranha plants suck. They're so fast. They can chase you down. Even from off screen, you can't even see them. Screw the piranha plants. They're the worst.
Wow, I actually
that
didn't.
first strike one.
Yeah, I didn't mind that because I started to figure out, like, they got me the first couple of times because I didn't realize they would just disappear underground and then appear right in front of you. Mm-hmm. But then once I started to anticipate it, I'd just walk slower through those areas and wait. And just as soon as I saw one of them go down, I'd push B to hit him with my hammer. And I got the initiative on them more often than not after that. Their attacks are also stupid easy to block. Yeah. Like, they're one of the easiest enemies to block in the whole game for me so far. Like, it's just the timing is crazy simple. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in that sense, I think they're not bad.
They just annoy me that I'm trying to avoid some battles, and they sneak up on me, and there's no avoiding them.
That's fair. Yeah. If you're trying to just book it through an area and not get into a fight, the enemies in this area are particularly adept at ruining that plan. Because there's also those small spiky guys that can get to you really fast.
They're pretty quick.
The clefts, I think, yeah.
And I always jump on them. I don't know why, but like I'll get the literal jump on them and end up losing 1 HP every single time.
Yeah. Part of the reason why I'm avoiding those battles is that I only have 10 HP, so I have to conserve all of it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I've been weighing my level ups toward badge points, but I haven't been going BP only, that's a completely different experience, and that's got to be a lot more difficult.
I go hard.
Nice. Going off something you said, Steve, I know you said you don't use Tattle outside of battle very often, and I kind of touched on this last week. I use Tattle in every scene and on every NPC because I just love Goombella's writing so much, and I love to know what she has to say about everything, and she has so much to say. So I don't know if any of you guys caught this, but I can't remember his name, but that weird French dude follows you to the Boggly Woods. I can't remember his name.
No,
Derek, you might know, I'm not sure, but he has a crush on Goombella, right? Or at least he suggests that he does. Yeah, so he follows you to Boggly Woods, and if you tattle on him, outside of battle, of course, Mario burns Goombella, and he says something like as if they're having a conversation, and Mario's like, or I should say, Goombella's like, wait, Mario, you say it's not even possible he followed us to the Boggly Woods because he's infatuated with me? You're such a jerk. Like, Mario... And in that way, like, you see this throughout the game with NPCs, but you get the sense of what Mario's saying through the reactions of the partners, and especially Goombella. Mm-hmm. So you get the sense that Mario said, no, why would he follow here? Because he's infatuated with you. He's not going to be infatuated with you. Screw you. You're nothing. Like, it gives you the sense that Mario's like kind of a jerk in this game when he wants to be, and it's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, his whole salute thing is a little dubious looking in general, too, by the way.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. Oh, Pro Toman says Dupree. Yeah, I guess his name is Dupree. I think that's what it is.
That's it.
Yeah.
Do we we encounter or do we fight the sirens at this point before going into the tree?
Yeah, you have to get the necklace back
that's
from
right.
the Shadow Sirens.
Okay.
How'd you guys do?
Oh, I think I did pretty well. I don't think they were too much of an issue.
Oh, I wrecked him.
Yeah, same.
Mario has, at this point, or at least I had, an attack with my hammer that would hit everyone. So I just basically spammed that. Like, every single turn, I used that against them, and they ended up passing out pretty quick. Mm-hmm. One thing I did enjoy about that battle was I had Goombella with me, and I used Tattle on Vivian. Is it Vivian?
Yeah.
And Goombella gets really insecure in that little piece of dialogue where she's like talking about Vivian, and she's like, she might be prettier than me.
Right.
Wait, what am I talking about? It was a really funny piece of dialogue that she had for tattling on her. But they're all pretty strong. I think they have like 10 HP apiece, and what is it? Vivian Marilyn can do some serious damage. Like, she can power herself up and hit you for like 4 damage, I think, in one hit. So I had like, it was touch and go a little bit, like, but I ended up not even healing. I just got through them by just using the same strat every turn, and they went down. But I definitely was a little intimidated by the fact that they all had like an AoE that could hit everyone, and that could hit Mario and my partner at the same time, even though they didn't do like a ton of damage when they used those, but they started just spamming those towards the end of the fight.
Right.
I got in only a little worried at one point when Marilyn got huge and Mario got turned tiny. I was like, oh. Well, this is unfortunate, and just had to work on that. But yeah, just a bit of bad luck there. Still did not have that much of an issue, but that was definitely.
I think I had Mario turn tiny as well. I think that happened. Maybe with a partner, but yeah, I still wrecked them, but I think Mario got into the danger zone at one point, possibly. But I don't know if I healed or anything. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this has to do with the character herself, but it's interesting. None of us have really talked about Madame Flurry very much, and that might have to do with the fact that, well, yeah, first of all, the design. Like, what a design, right? She's a very interesting character.
I said in my stream, it's funny that she's all about this very natural setting when there's very little natural about her.
Right. Nice. But I also love how she's so overtly comes onto Mario, too, right? Like, there's one line where she says, she's like, I want to give you a little sugar with a heart. Like, come here, you big hunk of a man, you, and I'm going to give you some sugar. And it's like,
Mario gets assaulted so much with kisses.
I noted this in chapter 3, so not really a spoiler, but it's when it really occurred to me. There's a weird sexual energy in this game. This is the most sexual Mario game that there's ever been.
Wow.
It's really true, because there are so many characters who, like, will call Mario, like, you big hunk of a man, or you giant bull of a man. Like, what?
Giant bull.
Yeah.
And then even Flurry has some. It's not. I guess it's not technically physics, but I think you know where I'm going with this. It's just very. It's just again, it just shows like some of the. I don't know, maturity is the right word for this, but this game definitely seems like it skews a little bit older in general than Mario has up to this point. And again, it does some things you wouldn't necessarily expect in a Mario game.
Oh, I was going to say the combat tutorial for Madame Flurry also says something like, with her body slam, she'll crush her opponents with her ... and then it just trails off and says presence.
That's pretty great.
I was like, yeah, okay, presence, let's go with that.
And as you were touching on her animations, or just her idle animation is interesting in the way it plays out.
And speaking of presence, though, Steve, again, it just shows how well written these characters are, because like everything about her, like even before you know her full backstory, kind of comes through in just her aura and how she presents herself, how she is a bit of a diva, and that just comes through in like every line of dialogue, and I love that. But despite being a diva, like she is caring, and it's not just all about her. So yeah, it's just fun how they play with these personality types without making them feel too much like caricatures. I mean, they obviously are. It's a Mario game. It's not too deep. But I do like that they don't seem to be incredibly shallow either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally
I mean,
agree.
I haven't found a character yet that I find just unlikable. None of them really irritate me. I'd say the closest thing to that is Koops. Just because he's kind of bland and vanilla.
Yeah,
as
Koops
far
are the
as
lamest.
personalities go.
Like Derek and I, we can't remember the difference between him and the one from the previous game. So
which I think is Cooper. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, Coop just is just kind of there. Like, I don't dislike him, and I think his relationship with his dad and wanting to to prove himself, it's cute, and it's it's a fun character trait, and you root for him, but he's just not that interesting.
So speaking of personality traits, this is something kind of interesting that doesn't really apply to the game we're playing. So first up, Straw Hat Ninja says, I always feel bad attacking Vivian. And yeah, I agree. It's especially when you consider a personality, or not, something about her that was removed from the English versions of the game, being in every other language version of Paper Mario and Thousand Year Door. She's actually a transgender woman. And apparently, even in the apparently specifically in the Italian version, she even comments about how proud she is of her transition. This is something you would have no idea about if you've only played the English version, as I think we all have. It's something you only know about reading, and I don't know the full context for this, so I don't know if Nintendo had other reasons to remove it from the English version. But at face value, I think it's unfortunate that they did remove that. Just something different from the character, something about that character that we had no idea about until like Mario Wiki became a thing.
Yeah,
it really is a shame. I'm not surprised they did,
No.
just especially given the political climate back then, in America, I'm not at all surprised. But I really wish they hadn't felt the need to do that. But yeah, I'm not surprised.
Well, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, that might also give some weight to the things Goombella says when she uses the tattle on her.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
That's also true. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's one big part of this chapter we haven't really touched on much yet, and that's once you actually get into the tree. But before we get to that, we have three comments here. I'm going to read them in reverse order. So first up, Jacob says, yeah, once you get inside the tree, that's when Chapter 2 gets needlessly complicated. Then we have Straw Hat Ninja who says, Chapter 2 is my least favorite chapter, then who also adds, what did you guys think of the Pikmin-like elements? So yeah, there's really no way to break down the tree, like, in a linear fashion. The whole idea is you're going through this tree, you're collecting punies along the way, and you use them to, you use a weight of them, I think, or in order to open up different passageways through the tree. And I'm kind of conflicted on the whole tree in general. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, especially Steve, since this is his first time through. For me, at first, for most of it, it wasn't as confusing as I remembered it being. But there was a point where I didn't remember what fully to do, and I ended up backtracking more than I needed to. And I'm like, I only remember how these rooms connect to each other. I've completely lost my way through this tree. Every room looked nearly identical. So for most of it, while I was able to keep on the main track, as soon as I didn't know what to do next, that's when it completely fell apart for me. And I didn't end up being stuck for too long, but it was long enough I was getting annoyed. But Steve, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But this was your first time through, and you had no idea what to do, no memory of what to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I've obviously been playing through with just offline. Like I'm not, leaning on guides or videos or anything like that, because I think that would kind of damage the experience for me. And I wouldn't say that I found the tree difficult per se, but there were times where it started to become tedious.
Treedious?
It's still too early. But There were times where, so for instance, there's right after you get like the first 10 out, right? There's, or you don't get them out. It's like you go into the tree and there's a small group and they're just jerks. Like they don't want to help you. They want you to do something for them first. So you go and you free the elder from the red cage, and then you go back down, and then the elder convinces this group of 10 to go along with you in Punio. And then there's a part where you have to get them across like a small two sets of chasms, right? Like underneath, you can fall down and there's like liquid under there, and if you blow the punies into that liquid, they end up floating up in bubbles, and then you move them. And it took me a while to figure that out. Like, okay, I've got to move the orb onto the other side, so they all want to get there to begin with, because otherwise they just won't. And so it took me a minute to get that done. But then once I figured it out, everything else kind of clicked into place, and I realized, okay, this is how all of this works. And so I didn't have issues doing any of it or solving anything after that. But what I did, it just became like, okay, it's one thing when it's 10, it's another thing when it's 100. And you have to, because I had to cross that thing like 2 more times with 100 punies, and it was deeply annoying. Like I was just like, I know what to do. It's not an issue of knowing how to do it, but there's a huge lack of desire to do it.
And then you have to worry about them getting scared by the piters at certain points.
That drove me insane. Also, that was the only point at which I saw the frame rate take a hit so far. So when I would have 100 punies with me and I would go into a battle, there was definitely a visible frame rate issue while it was trying to load the battle scene. Like, I would say it almost cut in half while it was loading that up. I mean, it was super brief, but it was noticeable. And then the battle ran fine. But yeah, the thing where the piters would scare them took me a minute to click in my head, like, oh, hey, they're getting scared of this thing. Because I think like once or twice I dropped down, collected them again, got them all back up, saw it happen, and then I started realizing, oh, they're visibly freaking out. There is a visual cue to this. So not bad, Nintendo, well done. But I hate this. Because then I have to beat them, gather them, go upstairs, get them scared again, beat that one, go downstairs. And I was just like, why? Why would you design this way? They could just stay there and refuse to move. That would be cool. I would much rather that happens. And then once Mario beats him, because you had to jump over a hole to get to him, he falls down. So yeah, it was just kind of...
The hammer can just barely reach it.
Oh, can
I didn't
realize
do that.
Nice. I think if you tattle in that area, Goombella tells you that they get that the Punies get scared of the Piters. I love that they're called Piters too, not like just Piter. Like those names are so silly.
I'm like, is Discord cutting off the S? Like, what's happening here? I didn't realize
they're
they're
just
called
Piters.
Yeah,
yeah, they're just called Piters.
Yeah, it doesn't help too, Steve. To your point that the width of the breath you can blow as Flurry, it feels like that wide. So if you're off even a little bit, you have to redo the whole thing. Yeah, so I guess kind of to what Straw Hat Ninja was asking about the whole Pikmin element. It's kind of annoying, which is accurate, because the pathfinding's not great in these guys either. You can just randomly lose some as you're turning a corner or something, and you may not realize it until like a room or two away. At which point you either have to go search for them, or you can return to the start and have the Elder bring them all back to you. But yeah, this is probably one of the most annoying parts of the game, I'd say, is just going through the tree. And I will say too, my memory, I remember the broad strokes of this chapter, but for some reason I thought that you collected the Punies in smaller batches, but you get them all pretty much in just like across 2 or 3 times in large groups. So that kind of surprised me, but
yeah. My favorite scene in this whole chapter is when you get the second group, when Punio is reunited with his sister, and there's kind of like a smaller side story happening here. Like they cut to Punio's sister, and she's in the cage with all the other Punies, and she pulls out this mushroom, and she's like, "I've been saving this," and everyone's like, "Ugh, that thing looks gross." Like they're like, it's all shriveled and dry, and you know, it seems like a funny thing on its own, but then when they reunite, she gives him the mushroom and he starts eating it, and she's like, and you know, it seems like such a heartwarming moment, but then just this tiny word bubble pops up above Punio. He's like, "Oh, nasty," while he's eating it, and people are like, "Oh, that's so gross." And she's like, "Oh, you don't need to do that. It's okay." And he's like, "No, it's okay." Like he's gagging and trying not to barf while he's telling her how sweet it was that she did that. And I don't know what it was about it, but just the delivery of that, I had to put down my controller and I just could not stop laughing at that. It's one of the funniest things I think I've seen in a video game in a long time.
Yeah, and he's like, "Give me a hug, Petunia." I think her name's Petunia, right? And he's like, he doesn't want her to see how grossed out he is. "Just give me a hug." And she's like, you know, big brother, get off me. What are you? Yeah. But I was going to say, like, despite some of the mechanical annoyances of managing the Punies, which I agree with you guys, I do really like the subplot of their whole tribe and the personalities that kind of come through for Punio and Puniper and the Elder. You know, I like that you find out that, you know, Punio's he's gonna lead someday, and he's trying to step up and be more responsible. And there's a really fun bit where if you go back to the Elder and you choose the "I love you" option, she's like, you know, "How dare you tease an old woman like me? I'll have you know that I was quite the catch back in the old days." And then she just goes on for hours, and Mario falls asleep, and then it ends with her telling the entire story of how she became the puny Elder. And so even though like some of that stuff's
in this chapter.
Yeah, I know, when she gets really big and she's like, you know, "Silence, shut up." I love that, especially with Crump at the end when she like, you know, Crump's like, "Get out of here, old lady. Like, you know, I don't have to deal with you." And she's like, "How dare you?" And, you know, scares even him, too.
I like how the old people just keep getting Mario's name wrong. It was Murphy in the first chapter, and now it's Marty.
Oh, yeah. Martio.
Yeah, Martio by the end of it.
So great.
Speaking of Crump, that's where I got lost in the tree, because I was navigating just fine, knew where to go, was kind of maybe going to certain places early, but didn't have too much trouble navigating. Again, I played more recently than you guys, so that probably helped a bit. But then I got to the point where I knew I needed the boots in order to drop down, but I thought you got them before a certain other section. And I was wandering around the trees like, where does this get activated? Did I miss something? Did I do something wrong? And then I just started putting the stone in each one, and that's when the scene activated where you get captured by Crump. I'm like, oh, of course, that. Right. So I wandered around for an extra 15, 20 minutes for no reason because I didn't remember that cutscene.
So
yeah, see, I think I benefited from not knowing, because I literally put the stone in every single one as I found it, just because I was like, oh, there's got to be something to do here. And so I got caught in it, just like, ha ha ha, you idiot, this one was fake. I was like, oh, how was I supposed to know that? Jerk.
Yeah.
So am I the only one who didn't know what to do after that point, so I exited the cage after being trapped. I found the boots, and I backtracked way too far because I figured I had to drop into the cage or onto the cage from above through one of those wooden panels in the floor. And after going through the entire tree, I'm like, well, that's not it.
You forgot that there was one inside the cage.
I remembered it at some point. I'm like, oh, right, there's one in the cage. But if you didn't see that or didn't notice it or didn't think that there might be one in there, does the game tell you at all? Because Goombella doesn't. No. So that seemed kind of like poor design to me. Like you could get, I feel like someone could get stuck there for a while without having to look it up. I just got lucky that I remembered. I was live streaming. I commented on it, I think, during initially. So yeah, that felt like that should have been telegraphed better or conveyed better. Like if you saved and came back to this game, you'd have absolutely no clue what to do at that point.
Yeah,
I didn't have trouble with that. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was going to say, for me, initially, because you saw a few of them before you got to that throughout the tree, so they kind of stuck out to me like a sore thumb. I'm like, they're always near these places where I can place the orb to gather all the punies, and for some reason there's a boarded up spot on the floor next to them. I was like, I spent like probably a solid like 30 seconds trying to figure it out. Like I was like, maybe I get all the punies to stand on it and it breaks under their weight, or maybe I hit it with the hammer. And so I'd already been trying to figure them out. So I kind of had them sticking in my mind as like, these are weird things that don't make sense. And then I got the spin jump, which doesn't seem like the right name for it. I think
I totally
in
agree.
64 it was called the hip drop. I mean, everybody calls it the butt stomp. Let's be real.
Yeah,
but the ground pound. I think,
is
what they go for sometimes.
Yeah, when I think spin jump, though, I think Super Mario World, like the spin jump.
Yeah, the actual
and
spin
so
jump.
that's what I was expecting. Yeah, and so when I did it in the tutorial, I'm like, that's not a spin jump. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but so yeah,
it's funny too.
I kind of had like a mental running list though of all these spots where I could do that, just because they stood out to me. So I didn't have an issue finding them, but I could understand, to your point, like if you saved and like maybe took a day off or even just a few hours off and it wasn't fresh in your mind, like it would be hard, because once all the punies are in there, you can't see that thing anymore
at all.
Yeah, I just kind of remember like, oh, it's off to the left. And
yeah, like I'm surprised one of the characters doesn't just comment on it. Like that would have kind of solved the issue. Maybe there is one in there that you can talk to. I tried talking to them all, but it's impossible to find the ones you can or can't talk to. But yeah, if someone comment on it, it's like, hey Mario, what's this wooden door here? You know, then that might trigger something. But
right. So. Like, I didn't get stuck there, but I did have this problem. This is entirely my own fault throughout, where I would just keep forgetting to take the puny stone with me after, getting them where I needed to. So I would just keep going, like, okay, and here's the next pedestal. Let's put the puny stone in. I don't have it. So I have to backtrack and go get it. And I did that probably 4 times throughout for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just kept forgetting to take it with me. So that, while I didn't get lost very often, and I pretty much had no problem navigating, I made myself backtrack a lot because of that stupid stone, and I would keep forgetting it. And then really one thing about the super boots, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but I thought it was funny that the game says, literally, you got a super boots when you get the super boots.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's not like you got the super boots. It's just, you got a super boots.
A bit of a weird issue there.
Yeah.
Something else we didn't touch on real quick is to get to this point is you have to battle that other tribe, the opposing tribe, at which point it really feels like Pikmin. You got to bring your whole horde with you. And I didn't even realize that there's a little bit, not much strategy, but there's a little bit of strategy to it, especially with the second one, where I went in with my whole crew and we got wrecked. I'm like, how? We matched them in numbers. And then I realized that's when you can use Flurry to stun them or blow them against the wall and have your crew take them on, so...
I didn't know that. I just hammered everywhere and won.
Oh, I tried hammering and I still
everywhere.
lost. So then I used Flurry in my second attempt.
That's so interesting, because I just hammered everywhere and I had like 40 punies left and just demolished them by the end. So that was...
I didn't know.
So,
yeah.
I had the exact same experience as Andre. So I kind of... The thing that strikes me as odd is it felt like it didn't play by its own rules, because when I got my 10, I walked into the room where there were 10 of them and I didn't do anything and we won. No problem. And so I was like, oh, well, I have 101 and they have 100. So by numbers, I should win. And I lost. And the funny thing is, my screen still read that I had 1 puny left. And so I was like, oh, well, that's strange. So I just went in there and I was like, well, I'll just blow them around with flurry and hope that solves it. And sure enough, then we won with like 40 left, and it wasn't an issue at all. But yeah, it was just a little weird to me that you can walk in to the room with 10 with just 11 punies and you'll win without doing anything. And then the second room doesn't seem to work the same way. You have to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even know you could use flurry.
Not a big roadblock, but
right. It wasn't nearly as bad as Chapter 1 and that room full of the dry bones. Yeah, that one to me was a little less well put together. This one at least I was like, okay, well, here's a thing I can clearly do to solve this. So,
it is,
and it worked the way I expected it to.
It is kind of interesting that I think most of us have hit some kind of snag in the game so far, where what we were supposed to do wasn't entirely clear, and that I don't know if that was always intentional. I mean, I think it was to some degree, but it feels like it's harder to discover the way forward at points than it is. And I have a really good example of this, but I think this is in Chapter 3. So yeah, that'll be coming up soon. Anyways, so after all this, we end up ground pounding to, I think, the base level, at which point we encounter what's his name again?
Crump,
thank you.
Crump.
Yeah, who apparently has a giant robot mech suit he can just hop into at will, which starts the I'm sorry. Before this, go ahead. Yeah, you chase him down through this fun escape sequence. A little bit. Oh, all right, Steve, give us your take on this.
I freaking hate this part. So
really?
Because this is probably the worst. Like, this is the part where I was the most confused. So you get this 300-second timer, which, by the way, starts going off during the dialogue, which is just BS. So I'm like sitting there, and I have I have my whole army of punies with me, and nothing tells me that I don't need them anymore. So I'm thinking that not only do I need to get Mario to chase him down, but I need to bring all my punies with me. And so I got back to the room that I was complaining about earlier, where you got to get them all in bubbles and get them over it. And I'm running low on time because I'm sitting there just, I've got maybe like 100 seconds left. And because I've never played it before, I have no clue how close I am to catching up with them. And so I'm like, oh God, who knows how much time I have left? I can't deal with this. I don't want to die. It's been a while since I saved. Like, I don't want to have to start this crap all over again because I ran out of time. And so I ditch him and and next room over, he's there. And so I was like, oh, I could have taken the time, but I didn't. And it was inconsequential. Like, it didn't.
I did not know that. I always brought him with me.
Yeah, I was just freaking out, and so I was like, "Bye, guys." I do the same thing to my Pikmin. You're toast. I gotta get back. And so, I go into the fight, and it's just a normal boss encounter. So I don't know what happens if you have him with you when you do it, but I mean, I still ended up kicking his butt. But
so how scared were you, Steve, when you got to the end, to the exit of the tree, and discovered that the timer still runs during the dialogue sequence?
Oh man, I was freaking out because I think he stopped it with like 40 seconds left. And I was like, oh, if he blows this tree up while I'm talking to him, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I wonder what happens. Like, I'm guessing that I would guess that once you're engaged with the dialogue, it can't run out. I think it would just stop, but yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
So because the character actually turns it off during that sequence, and you see the little timer disappear, which is just a fun little detail, I think. Another like fourth wall type thing. So I wonder what happens. I wonder if I'm sure someone's tried it, but yeah. So it's after this point then that you start the boss battle, right, with Crump.
Yeah,
who has
Magnus von Grapple.
Yeah, his giant mech suit.
Magnus von Grapple.
Rocket fists. How did you guys fare during this one?
I whooped him.
Yeah. So easy.
Yeah, this battle was not that difficult, which was surprising to me. I thought that it was going to be a lot harder than it was. I think Mario ended up in the danger zone one time during the battle, but I might have used like a single mushroom or something during it. But all in all, it was not what I'd call difficult or even challenging.
Hardest part for me was just figuring out which character he was going to stomp and timing that.
Yeah, that move is really hard to defend against.
It is, but it also doesn't do that much damage. And I think the main issue with this boss, in terms of it being too easy, is that the fists or the hands only have 2 HP each,
Right.
and that's incredibly easy to just knock out in one hit and in one turn. So I think if just the fists had more HP and you could use them to actually hit you more often because they do more damage, I think it would be a lot harder. But like they should have like 6 HP each or something, or maybe even 10. But
that would really
like
step
you
up
can
the
take them out
difficulty,
so
yeah.
easily.
That would
yeah,
really-
maybe 6. But like he never even got to use them against me, and I'm just like, this is so easy.
I
Oh,
had
yeah.
multi-bounce equipped, so you jump on a row. So I took them all out and damaged him in the same turn. I was like, I'm golden. He's not going to hit me.
Yep, that's exactly what I did too. I was so happy to learn that they would survive just one jump from Mario with those new super boots.
The hardest part for me during this battle was when he does his foot stomp and he goes between your 2 characters. I can never tell which one he's going to target. I'm like, I have no idea. He
Yeah.
always just gets me. Didn't matter too
Yeah,
much, but
the funny thing is the timing and defending against both moves that he uses without the fists are pretty hard. He also does that one where he just randomly starts to stomp and it looks like debris falls on you from above. And I couldn't get the timing on that either. I mean, fortunately, none of them were really powerful moves or anything. But yeah, I had a hell of a time trying to defend against both of those.
right, yeah, same.
Yeah.
So yeah, and after this, Derek, do you remember fully what happens here? You beat him.
You beat him. He runs off. You get the star.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
it. Because that marks
Yeah.
the end of the chapter, and then you'll get it a little bit more when you start chapter 3, or a little bit after you start chapter 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much chapter 2. So what's your guys' overall thoughts on it? What did you think of it in general compared, I guess in Steve's case specifically, compared to chapter 1?
It's not as good as chapter 1. I wouldn't out and out call it bad. I think it's paced really weirdly. And I think it centers too much around a dungeon that is not the most fun.
Right.
So it kind of, I wouldn't say it dampened my enjoyment, but I did come out of this one less excited than I did chapter 1. I was like, oh, let's go. Let's see what happens next. Whereas this one, I'm like, we kind of like beat up the guy. I don't really, where the hell do we go from here? Like, and one of the things that I truly dislike in games in general, and it seems to happen a lot in platformers or Mario games, is someone, like a bad guy has possession of an item, you fight over the item, and then they get beat, and rather than absconding with said item, they're like, oh, I'll let you have it since you won, because I'm an altruistic bad guy or something. So it's just such a weird thing. He's like, oh, you beat me, so I'll leave this here for you, and then run away. You're going to run away anyway. Take the prize with you, you jerk. That's your whole thing. You're not nice. So, yeah, it wasn't the most energizing chapter from a narrative or mechanical perspective, but I wouldn't call it bad. I just enjoyed it less.
So one thing you touched on real quick before we get to the others is that compared to chapter 1, like you mentioned how you wanted to keep going, like it filled you with like a sense of optimism, I think, or adventure, I suppose, especially with the music. And yeah, it is interesting to contrast, like I said in the previous discussion for week 1, where you go from like Rogueport, this really seedy, this town, like really seedy, just over, I would say underbelly, but it's a whole town. It's just really seedy. Then you go to this pristine, typical Mario land where the only danger is like a castle with a dragon. But then you go into like, and it feels like a very adventurous. The music's really happy. Just everything feels pretty pristine. But then you go to these woods, which is completely not opposite in tone, but very different in tone. Which is fine, but it does feel like I didn't necessarily feel like I wanted to push myself forward in this chapter, with how like kind of like unsettling, as we touched on, the music is in general. It wasn't like, it's not a fun area to be in, I would say. But I would say it's more interesting than chapter 1. So while there are parts that annoyed me more, I would say it felt more distinct, and I like that because I said before with chapter 1, it just felt so typical, generic for me, Mario standards, especially with Paper Mario doing something largely similar in his first chapter 1. I will say chapter 2, for as much as it could annoy me at times, it does stand out more. So while it might have annoyed me, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit better. I don't know, it's weird.
That's pretty much where I landed on it, to be honest. You pretty much nailed it, Andre. It stands out more because chapter 1 is a very traditional Mario style adventure, and Chapter 2, yeah, I mean, everything from the aesthetics to what you're actually doing, the whole Pikmin style managing the punies, it just stands out more despite some of the annoyances that can come along with that. And so, yeah, I think even if I wasn't having as much moment-to-moment fun as most of Chapter 1, perhaps, I think it stands out in my mind more. And I know some people say that this is their least favorite chapter, and I may end up feeling that way, but even saying least favorite in this case, I still really quite enjoyed it, despite some of the annoyances. And I also really like, just kind of a minor detail, but I like how the music inside the Great Tree changes depending on how many punies you have with you. Once you have all 100, yeah, like it gets more bombastic and more intense. So like once you have all 100 or 101, it's almost like you're in a marching band. Like you've got your entire army, and you're going to go take back the crystal star and save the tree. And I thought that was really cool. So it definitely stood out more to me.
To that point, real quick, first off, that's such a Mario thing to do. I love that. Like going back to Mario World, once he had Yoshi, it adds drums to the beat. That's something that Mario has been doing both before and since, and that is a neat touch. But even more interesting, I didn't even consciously recognize that until you just mentioned it, and I immediately knew what you meant. It's like, oh yeah, it totally happens, and it does add to it, even if I didn't consciously realize it. Real quick, Straw Hat Ninja says, "Don't worry, Steve, it gets better." And Straw Hat Ninja is not wrong, because I think it's from this point that Thousand Year Door really comes alive for me. But Derek, what's your take on Chapter 2?
I mean, it's pretty much echoing you guys. It's the design, not too bad. I wasn't hating it until I got lost in that one part where I overthought what I needed to do next, or when I needed to do something next, and just forgot about that Crump cage. But I really do like the characters in here. Punio's pretty endearing. The Elder is one of the best old characters in the game. There's quite a few of those. There's a lot of fun characterizations here, especially with the shadow sirens and whatnot. So from a story and character perspective, I think it does well. From a dungeon perspective and managing all the punies, it definitely gets a little old having to run around with them, make sure you don't lose any of them, and continue on. So it's a bit weaker by design in that case. I think the exploring Hooktail's castle is a lot more interesting and fun than the Boggly Tree.
Well, Hooktail Castle it's basically just a giant hallway with like 2 floors to it, so it's harder to get confused there, whereas here it's really easy to get turned around in the tree because it's not always clear where in the grand scheme of things you are. I would say that the castle was a better, I mean, definitely I'm glad it was in Chapter 1 rather than the tree. So
you'll never get lost in Chapter 3.
Any other points you guys want to bring up? Oh, Steve?
Oh, no. I was interested by Derek's comment about Chapter 3. I'm excited to finish that tonight.
You should be. So any other thoughts, guys, about Chapter 2?
There is one thing. Jacob Tucker in the chat brought up something I'd completely forgotten about, and that is the little Jabby that can join your team if you find the hidden shop in the Great Tree. Did you guys all find the hidden shop?
I found the shop. I didn't have one join my team.
I did not.
Yeah.
So there's a
little Jabby
hiding behind the stump
that you can talk to.
Yeah, he's hiding behind like a shrub or a tree stump or something, and he's the little Jabby friend that Punio talks about that he has. He's like, yeah, we're enemies, but I have one friend in that tribe, and he's the one hiding out in the hidden shop, and he'll join you, so you can actually get 101 on your team.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cute. I love those little details, like those little touches that don't have to be there. So,
yep.
All right, is that it, everyone, for Chapter 2?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and move on to Chapter 3, or rather, everything that starts off with Chapter 3, everything that comes a little bit before it, and that takes us back to the base that Princess Peach is being held at, where we get reintroduced, or a quick scene with Grodus, once again on this quest to retrieve the stars, the crystal stars. I don't think there's a whole lot going on here. We just learned some details of him catching up with everything. But it really comes to life when we transition back to Peach, of course, in which we take control of her again, get to explore her little room. We can take another shower if we want. If you want to get her short-lived hairdo. But during this whole sequence, we find out that Peach is remiss over things that she could be doing rather than being trapped on this base. such as I think some kind of dance. I forget what the exact occasion was. Do you remember?
I think like the mushroom ball dance or something.
Probably
Dance with the mushroom ball.
Probably some annual event. The Mushroom Kingdom is all about these annual events. So then her door mysteriously opens again to the hallway, which of course takes her back to the computer, Tech. And he informs us that he was apparently listening in on Peach's conversation to herself, and he was curious to find out more about this dance because apparently he wants to participate in this, but he doesn't know why. But there's a problem. He doesn't have a body. he's just basically like a computer, like Hal again. So in order to live out his fantasy, he creates a hologram version of Peach, which gave me some serious Blade Runner vibes, the new one, where they have the actual bodies that the computers can inhabit. Or not inhabit, I guess, but kind of like live through vicariously. So in which we see Peach dance with herself, a hologram version of Peach. And this is like a bit of a little mini game. We actually have to time button presses to it. And if you mess up, you have to do it again. So this whole little sequence is kind of interesting because once again it shows us that Tech is a very curious computer, and he's trying to get to the bottom of why he's having these odd feelings for I guess for Peach or about Peach. I'm not quite sure how you may explain that. So yeah, what's your guys' read? What was your guys' interpretation or take on this whole thing so far?
I forgot how weird this was.
It's really weird.
Right?
Like again, it really emphasizes just how creepy Tech is in the grand scheme. Like I think it's supposed to be endearing that he's like trying to learn all this stuff about Peach and figure out what is love, but just the way he goes about it just like skeeves me out. It's like this is he's playing her. I almost get the feeling, right. Just to get these touches, or like you're kidnapped with me, so I'm gonna take advantage of this because you have to do what I say in order to send out these emails to Mario. And it's a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast situation, except I don't think Tech is as likable as the Beast.
No.
It's funny, I got a completely different read on it. I don't get as much of a creepy, like, Tech is playing her vibe. It's a transaction, right? I mean, the terms were laid out at the
that
start.
doesn't make it better.
What?
I mean, but at the same time, though, I don't get that. Like, I don't get that Tech is trying to play her. I think
True.
they're just like, okay,
I don't think
I want
he's
you
trying
to
to play
teach me
her,
about
no.
love. What is fun? What is dancing? What is love? And like, he's asking her to do these things, and obviously, it's wrong that she's kidnapped no matter what. But given that she's in the situation that she's in, he's like, hey, you do this, and I'll let you send emails to Mario. So I don't get the sense that he's playing her. I will be completely honest, I forgot. Maybe he is. I completely forgot. It's been so long since I played the game. So maybe he is playing her. But at least my read of it so far is that Tech is being honest with her to the extent that it's able. But so, of course, it is weird. And it's like bizarre because it's kind of, Peach is dealing with this AI that's trying to learn about the concept of love. But I don't get the sense that it's intentionally playing her. But we'll see. Perhaps it is.
Yeah, I don't read Tech as necessarily creepy. I think in the context of the current day and age, the stuff he does is definitely creepy. But when I think about, societal norms back when this game came out, I don't think I would have read it that way back then. But yeah, like going back, I think if they remade this game, they'd have to scale Tech back just at least a little bit because it does come off like really weird. Like, hey, I've got you captive and I'm going to make you dance with my creepy ass clone that I made of you. By the way, it's you.
Right.
And I'm going to watch.
Yeah, how did he, at what point did he scan her full body for like a perfect recreation? I don't
right.
know.
Perfect computer and shower time, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So when I played this, I actually was like, I already know this dude's a creep, so I'm going to make her take another shower and see if he comments on the fact that I did that, which thankfully he didn't.
Yeah.
But I had to know because I realized the door was unlocked already. I was like, but there was a part of me, and this kind of speaks to how I feel about Tech in general. I was like, that door's not going to open unless I make her shower again, is it?
Oh, is that the case? I didn't realize.
No.
it isn't
I
at
did not
all.
take a shower.
But I'm
so-
saying,
Yeah,
like, my
it opens
expectation going
Right.
in was that Peach was going to have to buy access to Tech by showering. And I was like, please don't let that be what they do. And they didn't. But
No.
I still, it obviously implies, that I feel he's a creepy character, and
Right.
there is something creepy about. I mean, just the idea of having a transactional relationship with someone is creepy in and of itself to me. Like, You know, granted, in every relationship, in every real relationship, there is a give and take, but it's not quite so obvious.
Right.
So, but I really want to talk about what happens after the ship, because it's my favorite part of the whole game so far. And that is when we switch.
It is much more heartwarming.
yeah. So switching to Bowser is what I'm referring to.
Yes, right. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Steve. Take it away. This is your first time through this game, of course. So I want to hear your take on this.
Right. So we see they're in. I keep getting it wrong. Is it Petal Meadows?
Petal Meadows going to Petalburg.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bowser and Cammy arrive in Petal Meadows, and they're on the trail of Peach at this point because Bowser is dead set on kidnapping her, and this is just hilarious from start to finish. But my favorite thing, easily my favorite thing, is that you get to do World 1-1 as Bowser. And every time you get a power-up, he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And he still has this goofy shuffling walk, but he's just destroying everything. And I don't know if it was New Super Mario Brothers that trained me to expect it, but I was half hoping that when I got to like full height, that he'd just be kicking over warp pipes and stuff and breaking everything, which isn't necessarily the case. But it was just so out of left field and unexpected that we'd get to play this goofy, unlosable World 1-1 as Bowser. And I was absolutely in love with it. But then, they do such a good job with Bowser in showcasing like the lighter side of him as a character in this game. And when you get to Petalburg, it's just nonstop hilarity. Like, and they paint him as like this big, lovable idiot.
Right.
He's there like looking for Peach, talking smack to people, and then he thinks he's found her, and he's at this house, like, and he's so sweet to her. Like when he thinks it's her, he's not like, come with me, I'm gonna kill you. Like he's, oh please, come with me, let me take you away from here. While simultaneously other people behind him are talking to him, and he flips back to being a complete jerk whenever it's anyone but Peach. And then finally, like a Koopa comes out of the right-hand corner of the screen, and he's like, I'm not going to let you take my poster. And he just rolls Peach up and walks away. And Bowser is just dumbfounded that he's been sitting there talking to a poster. He's like, I'm not the king of the Koopas. I'm the king of weird guys that talk to posters.
I think that's the Koopa who took the thing. Because here's my question. Why was the poster hung up next in front of the window?
Right, it wasn't before. But I do like that it does deliver on what, if you'd explored that town the first time, you come across a guy with this creepy Peach shrine, and that's the same house where the that's the same guy that shows up and takes the poster. So I think it's kind of fun that there's a payoff for that, and it tricks Bowser. And I love, as Steve was saying, like just a whole portrayal of Bowser, like how up to this point at least he's always like 2 steps behind. He's like trying to catch up. He's like trying to get engaged with the story, but he just can't quite. So that's, the whole thing's always fun. And as you know, I love World 1-1. Straw Hat Ninja says playing 1-1 as Bowser was such a great surprise, and it is. You don't see that coming. It's fun to see the level like reimagined as a Mario, in the paper art style. And as Steve was saying too, like he had the New Super Mario Brothers vibes. This game basically invented the concept of the Mega Mushroom. Before the Mega Mushroom existed. This is 2 years before that. Except I actually like it in this game, whereas I didn't really much care for it.
Well, it's a lot shorter.
It's shorter too,
to be like that.
And it's funny, we would see this...
Oh, go ahead, Ash.
Go ahead, Derek.
I was just going to say...
We would see this repeated in Super Paper Mario later on. This was a big deal back in Thousand Year Door, being that it was the second game in the series, but Super Paper Mario would then go on to play with this idea, being a full-on 2D platformer, where you can get giant and stuff. So I thought it was kind of cool that they maybe took inspiration from this specific sequence.
Yeah. That's kind of where Paper Mario started veering off the rails into its own weird thing. But
a little bit.
Yeah, but, here's the one thing I don't get. Oh, sorry. Actually, Derek, you had a point. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a pseudo-canon explanation for why Bowser varies in size game to game. It's just whether he's had meat or not.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So Bowser is very, definitely pro meat diet, it seems. One thing I didn't understand though, so during the course of 1-1, you encounter X-Knots, which I guess makes sense for Bowser to be taking out. But it doesn't make sense for Bowser to be like stomping on Goombas. Like they get in your way, and Bowser's just clearing them out. What? They're his minions.
I mean, Bowser has made it pretty clear over the years that he considers his low-level minions collateral damage when he needs to. So he's just like, they're my minions anyway. They're going to follow me no matter what I do. I can wipe them out. No big deal.
I guess that's a good point.
He doesn't have a whole lot of sympathy. And there were a couple of lines that I thought were really interesting looks into his character. One that made me laugh out loud. There's when Cammy and Bowser are talking in Petalburg, they comment on how silent Peach is being. And, Cammy says something like, oh, the mind of a maiden is really mysterious. And then to himself, Bowser says, man, living with a silent princess could have its perks. And that's one of those things that would not play nearly as well today as as it did back then, I think. And I just, that made me, laugh out loud because I'm like, wow, they really went there. Like, Bowser straight up, he's like, oh, yeah, if she didn't talk, that'd be so much better. It's terrible.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely. It's funny just how much things have changed in 15 years to the point that that even dialogue in an E-rated game feels kind of edgy at points.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Anything else on the Bowser section, or should we move on to Rogueport?
I mean, that was pretty short and pretty much
Yeah.
it, so I think we can move on to Rogueport.
All right, so so we return to Mario at the Boggly Woods, wrapping up, talking to the Punies who are now free. They have their tree back. And we, of course, start our way back to Rogueport, and we meet up with Professor Frankly again. We find out that after visiting the Thousand-Year Door, the next place we need to go to is actually in the sky. And there was this one line of dialogue. I think I had Flurry out. I was gonna say Flurry equipped. I had Flurry as my partner member, and she's like, "How are we supposed to get there? Are we supposed to fly?" I'm like, "Well, you're floating around everywhere, so you probably could." But it's during the course of these events that you find out. I think, is it here that you find out that you need to take a blimp, or do we find out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So we find out we need to take a blimp, but we find out in order to do that, we need to meet up with the Don, the Pianta Don, in order to. I think he can hook us up with tickets. Actually, Derek, you probably have a better rundown of this full series of events here, but
Yeah, so for the Rogueport section, you find out you gotta take the whole blimp, but to even get to the blimp, you have to be able to get to the west side. So that's why I was telling you guys, make sure you order those contacts so you can get past Zesty. So hopefully you guys did that when you were playing through. Then you get over there and it's like, okay, how do I get to the Don? You're not really sure. Eventually you got to figure out that you actually got to go to the east side, talk to the rival gang who tells you about the secret code that you need to do in order to actually meet with the Don. So you finally do that code by buying two specific items in the West shop. And,
I love that, by the way. That's a fun little way of hiding.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, you can completely, if you know about that, you can just do it right away.
That's really cool, yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually really cool.
Yeah. You
also, I just want to point out really quick that the leader of the Robo Gang who's in this turf war with Don Pianta, his name's Ishnail, and I think that's just fantastic. I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah. But you do the password, you get into the back end of the store, which leads up to the Don's office, where he is a little distraught. He needs a little bit of help because his daughter has run off with one of his mob guys, and he needs you to find her and at least maybe not bring her back, but at least tell him where she is. So you run around Rogueport, you find her at the docks, where she is eloping with it's Frankie and Francesca, and they're eloping together. And you can decide whether or not to rat them out or whatnot. But when you go back to the Don, they have a change of heart because Frankie didn't want to leave on those terms. He didn't want to be on the run. He wanted to, be honest with the Don and the boss. And so they get back, talk to the Don. He has a change of heart where he's like, oh, he really cares. And they are able to leave together because he's like, can't have him in their sight, but they're able to leave together and, be in love. And in return, you get the pass to take the blimp and therefore leave Rogueport. And that's only the stuff to get into the Glitz Pit. And there's so much more that you can do beyond that.
Yeah, there was so much going on in just the prologue, and I think Steve and I had a similar story here. Because I only remember the broad strokes. I forgot a lot of the specifics. So Steve, how did you fare during this during the Rogueport sequence leading up to Chapter 3?
I hated this section so much. So, first off, the first time I heard Don Pianta, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to see more Piantas kicking the crap out of people. Like that, because in chapter 1, they show you, or in the prologue,
they beat
show
up
you.
the guy in the background.
Like, right when you first arrived to Rogueport, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And then, in true Pianta fashion, it's a complete letdown. You get there, and it just felt like one big, insanely long fetch quest. Like, oh, hey, you got to go to the west side. Oh, but this crappy toad needs a contact lens. Cool, I'll order it. And then they're like, oh, well, it's not here, boss. You just got to wait. Because like an idiot, I didn't do it earlier. And so logically, I'm like, okay, well, this is early 2000s game design. I'm going to make Mario go to sleep. That'll solve the issue. And then I go to sleep in the inn, which is in the same section of Rogueport as the shop. So then I go back to the shop and they're like, hey, Mario, you still got to wait. Like nothing's changed. I go sleep at the inn again. Doesn't change. And then I remember this is the GameCube. I haven't unloaded this area from memory yet. And so I leave to any other part of town, come back, and they're like, oh, hey, it's magically here now. Congratulations.
Nice. Right.
This doesn't make sense. And so I give Zesty her contact lens.
Real quick,
proceed
Steve. It could have been even worse, because as you're going to encounter the next area, there's actually a part of the town that tracks a real-time GameCube clock. So they could have almost made you wait a full day if they wanted to.
True.
Yeah.
There is that. Yeah. That would have, we wouldn't be doing Game Club today, because my GameCube would be broken. But I went ahead and got down to, I followed the events. I got to Don Pianta. He asks me to find his Francesca and her dude, the white suit Pianta. And he goes, they look like this. They can't have gotten far. And those are really important words to me. Can't have gotten far means they're in the immediate area.
Right.
Which they are not. So,
yes.
And the worst part is, I'm thinking, there's a blimp and a train right up there. They're going out of town. And I remember that there's a dock, but what I don't remember is that you have to kind of like go in between a tiny hole in the fence post and then go off screen to find the actual dock. And so I'm in the area where I know the dock is. I don't see them. I'm like, where the hell are they? And so I get frustrated and I finally DM Andre. I'm like, where the hell are these damn Piantas? This is driving me crazy. And he's like, yep. they're right at the docks. And so I went back there and I was like, stupid. Like I should have thought about it,
right.
But it was just one of those things that I felt was really like, the whole sequence was just frustrating. Like you have to go west, and then they tell you have to go all the way east across Rogueport to talk to one person to tell you a stupid combination at the shop to go back west to go, do those. It just seemed like such a weird, like unnecessarily dragged out thing. Like, I would have rather just beat the crap out of Don Pianta, taken the damn blimp ticket, and gone on my way.
I
Steve,
think we're learning some things about you,
You're
Steve.
in for something as we go along because, this is a light element of that. It gets worse.
Well, I think we're learning some things about you, Steve, because before you're like, oh man, yes, I'm going to get to see some Piantas beat up some people again. Yes. And then you're like, man, I wish I could just beat up Don Pianta and just take the ticket, not have to be diplomatic about it. So you're just
I want
got
the,
some
I want
bloodlust
the
going,
option
man.
for violence as often as possible.
Right? No, it's funny. I didn't actually mind this segment. I didn't really. Well, there was one part where I got tripped up, and it was a completely different part, interestingly enough. But I had already done the contact part, so I guess I had just, I didn't have to deal with that in the moment, and that certainly would slow things down. But I didn't really have any trouble finding the Piantas, and I didn't remember where they were. The part where I got tripped up was that I didn't have enough coins for Ishnail. You have to pay him 64 coins to find out how to get to Don Pianta.
64,
so
but I like
actually
the 64,
had to go
by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love how it's 64 coins. But yeah, I had just bought some badges and such, so I actually had to go down into the Rogueport sewers and just fight some low-level enemies just to get enough coins, and that part was a little annoying, that I had to grind for coins. Other than that, though, yeah.
I just sold my badges. I went to the badge store. I'm like, I don't need some of these. So I sold a few of them for like, I think I made like probably 200, or no, not 200, a few dozen coins off a few of them. So yeah, I just unloaded and paid them off that way.
Wow.
So
that's interesting to me. I was going to ask you guys, is there a way to talk him down? Because
don't think so.
The dialogue seems to imply that there is. Like when you pay him the 64 coins, he's like, "What? Really? I mean, yeah." He seems like he got one over on you big time. And
I think he's just, unfortunately, at least I read that as he's used to being poor. Like he's been run out of town essentially by Don Pianta. all he's got is the east side of town. That's his turf, and he's in this rundown shack. So I think, because I said no originally just to see what would happen, and he doesn't, you can't, bargain him down at all. So I think he was unfortunately so used to being poor and in this, roughshod shack that he's like, really? You're going to pay me that many coins for me to tell you this information to go get yourself killed? Yeah, sure.
So I think I actually like most of the sequence. I mean, I think one of my favorite parts about Rogueport is how you can uncover areas that add context to things you've seen before. Like when you go to Ishmael, I think you have to like navigate between a thin gap in the buildings, and you end up going through the back door, so that explains why the front door is locked. Like you now understand what that building is. Similar thing when you get to the west side, you can drop into the sewer through the grate, and I just love, for some reason, I find the exploration so satisfying in this town. It feels like you're uncovering these hidden nooks and crannies, and it just really feels like you're kind of like uncovering something for yourself, even if you're obviously meant to do this stuff. However, also I love the whole casino area, what's it called? There's a name for it.
Pianta Parlor.
Yeah,
the Pianta Parlor, yeah.
I played some of the slot machines. I ended up winning immediately. Then they got its hooks into me, and I ended up taking like a major loss for a while until I managed to almost just about break even. So I'm like, all right, I'm quitting while I'm ahead.
I didn't actually play any of the parlor. I didn't think it was possible yet. I kind of forgot that it was.
So the parlor's kind of threw me off too, because here's where I get frustrated, as during the part that Steve messaged me out when I was looking for the runaways, basically the elopers. What threw me off is, where the heck were they? Because it's only during the sequence that you finally get access to the train, that you even learn of the train and the blimp. And I think even the dialogue that the Dawn uses is they're catching a ride somewhere. So I'm like, well, obviously that means a train. So initially I went to the train and walked up most of the platform. I'm like, well, they're not here, very seemingly. So I went back and went all over. I went back to the parlor because it's run by the Piantas. I'm like, well, maybe they're here somewhere. And I ran all over the town. I'm like, where in the heck are these guys? And then I went back to the train station and walked to the very far edge in case they were somehow in the very corner that I didn't explore. Because again, I'm pretty sure the word they used is ride, and you ride a train. Not there. So I'm like, what the heck? So I eventually looked it up because I was running out of time. Like, I gotta beat chapter 3. And then I learned they're at the freaking pier. I'm like, really? They're at the freaking dock? And yeah, I think they could have used... I think they could have been more explicit with their wording, but I pretty much forgot it. I mean, I obviously knew it existed, but I didn't make that connection with the dialogue they used, and the fact that it's at the very far south of the screen. You have to walk all the way to the bottom of the area to even see them. So I think that could have been done. That could have done a little bit better. The fact that it tripped up half of us, despite me also playing the game before. I think it's something that could have cleaned up a bit. So
you don't go to the dock that often, so I think that's what throws it off, especially early on.
I mean, also the dock's pretty hidden, so even though we know it's there, it's so easy to not keep in mind because it's at the southern end of the main area even, and there's no reason you travel that far south. So yeah, it's just kind of an easy area to like temporarily forget about.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
yeah, that's basically what happened to me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well,
did you?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you guys did anything else while you're in town, because there is at least one thing that you should always do in between these chapters. We checked in with Peach. We checked in with Bowser. Did you guys all check in with Luigi?
Yes.
Of course.
So, and that might have been what distracted me from the dock, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's down there, and then I talked to him, and then I moved on. and yeah, his story continues to be pretty funny. Like just the parallels between what he and Mario are doing is and Mario's utter lack of interest in it. Because I mean, Mario, if you idle him, he goes to sleep fairly quickly. But the minute Luigi starts talking, he knocks out.
Yeah, is Mario just narcoleptic in this game, or
pretty much?
And I like how they start to set up how Luigi has his own partners, but they're having a much rougher time of it than Mario's partners are.
Yeah,
and we see that with the blooper, the poor guy
Bluey.
who got what's his name? Bluey, right? And who's like the white torpedo. He's like this. He's described as this crazy psycho blooper who can just he's a crazy fighter. He can get things done, and yet Luigi chucks him in the lava, and now he's forever singed. And I think he just trips. That's why.
The thing I love is that you've got Luigi telling this story about how he and Bluey saved the day, and how he needed Luigi's help and Luigi threw him. And then Bluey, you talk to Bluey and he's like, this dude is lying.
Yep.
He's like,
Don't believe the
everything
word
he's
he
telling
says.
you is complete BS. And I'm only hanging around him because I'm waiting for my chance for revenge.
It's so great. Yeah,
You're
I
seeing-
love
Really
that.
great.
Yeah.
It really paints Luigi
So
as like a villain in his story.
Yeah.
What's also funny is that Luigi gets around too because he's also in the audience sometimes, cheering Mario on in
Right.
his own battle. So how is he getting around so quickly?
I mean, I guess it's explained by the fact that the game's already literally breaking the fourth wall with the fact that it takes place on the stage. So
Right.
Yeah, who knows? They're pulling some like Mario 3 thing here, where the entire game's a story, right? Which also is something I wanted to bring up real quick. I meant to mention in the previous episode was that the whole game starts off with like with it reading a book, telling the story of what happened, which I just find interesting. Like these are events that already occurred. We're looking at them back from the distant future, seemingly. So is everyone dead now? Like in the actual time frame of the story? Like is Mario long?
I thought the book was only. Well, actually, no, you're wrong because I was thinking it was only for the
see
history of the
Peach.
Thousand Year
You
Door,
see
but then
Peach
it goes
in there.
into Peach at
Yeah.
the beginning. So you're right.
Right. Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? So unless a book is being written from that point, but there's no indication that it's actually the case. It does seem like but it says a long time ago, and it starts telling the story. So
Well, we also have a kid contemporaneously playing the game we're playing.
right, good point.
It's best not
Great
to
point.
think of it.
Just a couple final things I wanted to bring up, and that's just a dialogue with the Don. Again, like how he refers to how is it his nephew that runs off, or
It's his daughter and just one of his guards.
one of his guards. That's right.
He's like his adopted son. He's like, you were like a son to me, Frankie. So it's like they're not related, but he's gonna
Right.
take over the empire, assumedly.
Oh, that's actually immaterial to my point. Actually, I forgot. So I think he's referring to Mario in this case, saying how some broad got herself kidnapped and some skirt he
Yeah.
fell for. I'm like, again, this dialogue, like
So good.
yeah. And then also Oh, go ahead.
I was just like, who'd have ever thought back then that you'd play a Mario game where Peach is referred to as a
a
broad
skirt.
and or a skirt?
Right?
Like, yeah.
What? But it does play perfectly into like the character type that Dawn is. So I love that they didn't shy away from that. And then also another word that surprised me was when you use Goombella to talk to the blooper that is the Luigi's partner. She refers to him being peeved. And again, just another word I wouldn't expect to see in a Mario game.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Chapter 3. We go to the blimp. We have our ticket from the Dawn for finding. Oh, actually, real quick. Did you guys tattle on the Runaways, or what did you tell them you would do to the Dawn?
I tattled.
Yeah,
I
did
didn't
too.
tattle.
You didn't.
I didn't.
No.
I told them I wouldn't, and then I didn't. And of course, then they come anyway.
Right, doesn't matter,
because
yeah.
Frankie has a change of heart. But yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was so annoyed at that point that I just wanted someone to get burned. I was like, I'm definitely telling.
The white torpedo got burned.
blood.
Yeah, this is Steve's the Luigi of our conversation here.
I know.
Yeah, just,
Here I
Yeah,
am
but
like, oh man, I want them to, I believe in the power of love. I want them to be happy. I'm not going to tattle on you guys. Like,
No, man,
go
I
live
want my blimp
live
ticket.
your happy lives.
all right. So
I'm getting that blimp ticket. That's what matters.
So we've got our blimp
Nice.
ticket. We head to the Cheap Cheap, and we catch a ride on the Cheap Cheap shaped blimp, which is weird. Why are we flying as an aquatic creature? I don't understand. I guess
love
it,
though.
Yeah, it's great.
And
I
really
do-
quick about that sequence, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the music that plays
got my note
during
here.
the blimp sequence. Oh, it is. Okay, cool. So it's a very loose remix of the Mario 3 athletic theme, and I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and not just that too, Ash. What's cool is they actually play that through the chapter transition, where you see the spinning
Right.
chapter coin, which normally has its own unique music. So that's just kind of fun that they changed it a little bit, and it makes it feel more of a continuation rather than like a harsh transition. And I like
It
that.
does.
Yeah, kind of feels like you are on this journey at the moment. So.
Yeah.
All right, so Chapter 3. Derek, do you want to give us like a quick rundown on what exactly happens, at least for the first segment, I suppose?
Yeah, we can go for at least to as you get there. So you arrive at Glitzville, which turns out to be just a floating city that's all about this fight arena that's run in town, and you head inside, and as you're exploring the arena, you see the champion, Rockhawk, who is just undefeated, absolute star. Everybody loves him. But he also has his championship belt, which contains the crystal star. So the only way you're going to get that belt and get the crystal star is to enter the arena yourself, sign up, and take on and try to rise the ranks and take on Rockhawk yourself and unseat the champion. So you go meet with the the organizer of all the fights, Grubba, and sign yourself up. He makes this big show of how the things that await you, and then you get put into a crappy locker room for the minor leagues, and you got to start working your way through the minor leagues. 20 battles in total, but we'll only cover the first 10, where you got to work your way through those battles. And partway through the minor leagues, you actually encounter a Yoshi egg. And it follows along with you, and it turns out to be quite helpful for when you reach the battle that will take you into the major leagues. So yeah, that's sort of the rough idea of what you do through the first half of Glitzville.
Mm-hmm. So Steve, this was your first time again playing Thousand Year Door.
Yeah.
What did you think of the what did you think so far of the chapter, leading kind of like the first half of it, I suppose?
Up to this point, honestly, when I got to Glitzville, I was frustrated. Rogueport did not do me any favors in terms of just like, I felt it was really frustrating, more so than it should have been, to find Francesca and her bow. Mm-hmm. Like I ended up searching the sewers. I ended up looking all kinds of places before I finally broke down and DM'd you. So I was just pissed off by the time I hit. Like I was like, I don't know where the hell they are.
You were peeved,
and so by the time
Steve.
I got to Glitzville, I was like, it's about time. So I was like, let's see what's happening here. So. Which really sucks, because for me, like I mentioned earlier, the Bowser moment, the Bowser prelude to this was so much fun, and was like one of my favorite moments, if not my absolute favorite in the game so far. So I was kind of like at a point where I needed Glitzville to be really good to maintain my interest, and I don't know that it got all the way there.
So how come? What did you know?
Yeah, because I mean, I love beating the crap out of things, so there's a lot of that in Glitzville, which is fun, but I felt like it didn't quite have enough variety for me. Like
it is.
I need more than just beating the crap out of things, and I felt like there were other things that happened in Glitzville, but it was it always felt like it took a distant backseat to the fighting.
Yeah, I
like,
guess
to
yeah.
the fighting, which.
I think we can broaden the conversation a little bit. I just don't want to get too deep into the specifics, like some of the mysteries and whatnot. But yeah, I think Glitzville is really interesting as a chapter because it is kind of inherently repetitive. You're basically working a job. This is almost the Shenmue forklift moment of this game, where you're even being paid for what you're doing as you work your way, fight your way up the ranks. And I can see. I'm curious, Steve, if your perception changed or your opinion changed all the farther you got in. Because, yeah, for the first half of the chapter, there's not a whole lot going on. It's pretty straightforward. There doesn't seem to be much to the story. It's like you're just trying to fight your way to the top and get that belt.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah, so for me, I followed the Ash Paulson school of playing Paper Mario, and I decided to just go full Goombella, like the way,
nice.
as much as I could throughout the chapter. And I started using tattle on everything.
Yep.
And using Goombella's tattle kind of spoiled the mystery for me.
Oh, really?
Because you meet up with Grubba, right? And if you tattle on Grubba, she's like, this guy is exceptionally well built for a 60-year-old. Like, he's really jacked for an old guy. And I'm like, there's definitely something going on with Grubba, and he's the boss. Like, it just clicked for me the minute I read that. And I was like, cool.
That's funny, because I actually tattled on Grubba too, and I read the same thing. I know exactly what you're talking about, Steve, but even though I played the game, that didn't ruin it for me. I did not remember how the mystery panned out at all. So that didn't... Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so here's... Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, so, I mean, there's a point, like, you walk in when you go to the fight arena and you see Rockhawk for the first time, and he's got the crystal star, or what we believe is the crystal star, on his belt, right? I'm like, that's really straightforward. This doesn't make sense. Like, so I was like, it's not that easy. Like, there's no way that we're just going to fight our way up the ranks, get the championship belt, steal the star from it, and just take off. Like, that's not how this goes. I was like, Rockhawk does not look like main boss material.
Right.
Like, he's, unless he's super evil, but throughout the chapter they just kind of paint him as an insecure jerk athlete. Like there's nothing inherently evil about Rockhawk. He's just a jerk.
Yeah, he's Drago. He's a proto Drago from Ring Fit Adventure.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, you
Like,
say there's nothing inherently evil about him, but this is someone who's not afraid to literally drug you and your partner.
well,
that's
that's
getting
true.
into the
Literally
second
drugs
half.
you
That comes a little later,
if you fall
right?
for it.
Yeah.
That's true, I guess.
yeah.
We'll get into that
in
later,
reference
Ash.
to the first half,
But-
he comes off as just
Sure.
kind of a jerk, you know.
So
and,
it's,
and then you find out later there's more to him than that. But
so it's so interesting to hear these different takes so far. Yeah, like you, Ash. I remember the broad strokes. I mean, but not as much as I thought I did. Apparently, but I had completely forgotten the mystery too. I was actually worried going in, that I wouldn't have as much fun with this chapter because I'm like, oh, I played it before. I remember the mystery. I didn't. I didn't remember anything, and I'm actually glad apparently that I didn't use tattle on everything because that does sound like that might tip me off enough, Steve, to what the what the plot twist, if you want to call it, is. Because going through this, I had no idea like who the real villains were. In fact, I love how the game, for me at least, it kind of plays with your expectations. I found at least as to who the real villain is. And I guess we can kind of broaden it a little bit because like at one point you're in a back room and you see Jolene like kind of like watching you through the doorway. Like she's keeping her eye on you. It's like, oh, is she the real villain here? And you even see and I guess I kind of get ahead of things here, but you even see like behind the scenes with what's the main guy's name? The main promoter.
Oh, Grubba.
Oh,
Grubba. You even see him like talking to Jolene behind the scenes. He actually seems like a pretty decent guy. He doesn't seem like that bad.
Right.
And he's not like really trying to hide things. You see like maybe a glimpse of something where like he shuts a drawer at one point. But to back things up a little bit here, what I really like about this chapter for me is it's a slow burn. It almost reminds me of. It's almost like Paper Mario's version of a bottle episode. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's an episode filmed on a low budget in like a single location, not a ton of characters, and they kind of like just take they kind of like stretch out for as much mileage as they can get. And that's kind of what Paper Mario does here. The setting never changes. You're always in the same location. You can explore a little bit more of it as you go through it, but it's always in the same general area, same general vicinity, and it's with the same characters throughout the entire thing. And I really like that, how it's a slow burn and it kind of drip feeds you, especially once you reach a halfway point, where it kind of teases these mysteries and it starts really playing into them as you start uncovering them, and you feel like an active participant in that. So I actually really enjoyed it. I was worried I wouldn't, because I remember it feeling really repetitive in the past. And for whatever reason, I didn't have that sense this time. Like, there were a couple times where I'm like, okay, I wish I could get through these battles a little bit quicker. But for the most part, It worked for me. And especially once you reach a halfway point, that's really when they start, that's really when things start like kicking in overdrive as you start uncovering these weird mysteries where between almost every few fights, if not every fight, you uncover some weird thing going on.
I have to say, I completely agree with all of that, Andre. I had very much the same experience. I remembered it being pretty repetitive, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it this time. And while I do think that the length could have been truncated a bit, like maybe it should have been 7 rounds per league or something like that instead of 10, I do think it's a bit long. But other than that, I love how daring it is. In terms of the structure of the chapter, as you were saying, it's very daring for them to go with that kind of structure. Again, it's one area, and you get to explore more as you go, but it really is learning about the area itself and the characters in it. I think the way this episode plays out makes it feel very homey, and it lets you really connect with all the characters that you meet along the way. Especially in the minor leagues. Like, I love how almost immediately the minor league characters almost feel like a family.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, we want to help you, and let's rise through the ranks together and make it together. Yeah, and King K especially. Like everything King K says is just gold. There's a match later on in the minor leagues after you win and you talk to him and you come back and talk to him and he says, oh man, did you see those shorties in the front row? Like, you should get some digits, man. They were totally into you. And it's like, this guy is hilarious, and the way he talks is just so good. And yeah, so it's like you almost feel like you're a family with these minor leaguers. And then of course, we'll talk about the major leagues later, but I do like that the repetition does get a little bit much and it is a little too long. But the repetition also makes it so that you feel like you're part of this world and part of these characters. And as you said, Andre, an active participant in what's in the mystery that's unfolding. Mm-hmm. Really quick, I want to back up for a second, but did any of you tattle on the the blimp operator?
No,
I didn't.
I did.
So if you tattle on him, his name's Stuart. Goombella says his name's Stuart, the cheap. Why? Well, why not? And she literally breaks the fourth wall and says, "Oh, Cheap Cheeps have been around for a long time in the Mario Brothers series. Like, you should know these guys, Mario. Oops, I just broke the fourth wall there, didn't I? Don't pay attention to me. Never mind me. Let's move on." Like, she literally references the fourth wall, and I thought that was really cool.
I like how also is he the captain, but he's not the one actually flying the ship. Like she says how it was his dream to be the captain, but he's just a ticket taker.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I agree with a lot of that. I love the characters of this chapter. There's so much personality between Rockhawk, between King K, all the other people that you can talk to, the camera operators who don't want to bother with you when you're in the minor leagues and just like go away and don't bother me. You got this rich bomb family who is talking about, like, I forget whether they're trying to buy a fighter or the fight pit or the hot dog stand.
They try to buy the hot dog stand. Yeah,
that's it. The hot dog stand.
Why is there a pig running the hot dog stand?
I wrote that down. That is so dark.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so dark.
It's messed up.
My favorite part too is they not only want to buy the hot dog stand, they want to do it like in a hostile way. He's like, I'm considering a hostile buyout of this hot dog stand.
I know.
Yeah, I feel like
And
there's
the wife has nothing to do with it. It's just like, whatever.
I almost feel like there's some class commentary in this chapter that we can maybe touch on a little bit later. But anyways, Derek.
Yeah, so all the characters are great, but the repetitious nature really bogs it down because I'm not talking to them each time because I'm just trying to get through these ranks. There's 20 ranks, so it's just battle after battle after battle, and they try to make them interesting by having Grubba's little, like, do this during it, but they can come across as a bit annoying.
Yeah, the
than
conditions,
just-
the battle conditions.
Yeah, the battle conditions that he said. So I appreciate this chapter. I like what it does. I hate the structure because
I
it's
agree with
just
Derek.
too repetitious.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
I
Even
couldn't
split.
agree more. It's just it's too many battles back to back. Like it just feels like you're grinding through this chapter. And like Derek mentioned, Grubba's requirements, they don't really work that well to add variety. And some of them just make battles like infinitely harder to the point that they're not
like, don't
fun.
attack.
Yeah, don't attack for 3
turns.
turns. Or you can't use jumps, but this, or like this guy's only vulnerable to jumps, but you can't use jumps. So I'm sitting there like, okay, I guess my choice is to run away or get killed. Like,
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused on how the actual how that actually works, because there were times when I would lose and I would maintain my rank, but definitely dropped a rank at some point. Is if you lose twice in a row, or
it's not twice in a row. I think it's if you fail Grubba's requirement and you lose.
oh, is that
Right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so if he says don't jump and you jump
Right.
and then you still lose, you go down a rank. But if you jump and you win, you have to fight. You maintain your rank, but have to fight someone beneath your rank instead of getting a promotion match.
Okay.
It was dumb.
So yeah, so for me, like this is what Steve and Derek are saying right now is what I expected I might find. But I think for whatever, I'm usually one who's pretty susceptible
Actually,
to.
you know what the difference is? I just realized. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andre.
That's fine.
The difference is you and Ash went in not knowing what the
That's
mystery
probably
was.
it. That's a probably.
Steve and I knew the mystery. I remembered it, and Steve figured it out.
That's
And
probably I can absolutely
That
see
could
that.
be
I think the tease of the story was definitely what pulled me through, and I didn't mind the structure, and I think the structure is actually essential to the narrative of this working. And I love the development of everything. We've already touched on the characters, how almost all the dialogue changes after every match, whether it's people in whether it's local to the room you're in, to the the other guys you're competing with, talking to them. The combat dialogue can change too. Or even when you explore the outside areas, like how the characters the spectators, they actually recognize you. They start to recognize you more and more as you go through the chapter. I love the little details, and even beyond that too, like Mario's posters are starting to get, or the Great Gonzalez, I should say, his posters start to be hung up in the lobby. Eventually you'll amass, when you first go into the lobby, you'll see a crowd around Rockhawk. Eventually that'll become your crowd, and I love that. And I also love too, they can hammer the ground. You can get rid of all of his fans. Did any of you try to do that?
No, I didn't.
I didn't try
Yeah.
to do that,
It's so
and I'm the violence guy.
Right, I'm disappointed. So Rockhawk actually comments, he's like, dude, that's not cool, or something of that nature. Like, how dare you, like, get rid of all my fans? So I love the slow burn of the chapter. Like, again, it really does remind me of like a bottle episode of a show in this game. And the mystery really, I will say it's not quite as compelling as I remember it being like when I played it the first time. I remember everything paying off a little bit better, but I still had a sense of payoff, and I still enjoyed the entire mystery all the way through. Like when you get basically, I think it's when you get the first email. It's like right around chapter 10, I think, or is it even earlier?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. I think for the first 10, first 10 matches, it plays it pretty straight. There's almost no hint of something going on. Actually, well, Steve, this is your first time through. Did you have any indication that there was something amiss for the first 10 chapters?
At this point, I already knew what it was. I had tattled on Grubba, but like the minute I met him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, oh,
so
great.
funny.
Like, I have 20 fights to go through for no reason.
So before that point, you didn't know that there was a mystery?
No, I mean, but I had also just met Grubba. There's something that I think about when this chapter, because I spent a lot of time thinking about it before this discussion. I think if it was contextualized differently, I would have enjoyed it more. Like, say you're on your way to Glitzville and somebody, boards the blimp you're on and kidnaps Mario and forces him into this. Mm-hmm. Then I might be like, okay, there's a narrative reason for me to be invested in these fights. Like, I got to get out of here. But we're just trying to find the friggin' crystal star, and I already know that none of the fighters are going to get it for me. So I'm like, I got to beat them up anyway because the game's going to force me to, but I know this has nothing to do with how I get the star. And that was what was bugging me because I'm like, this is just a mindless slog. Like, and every now and then, I get an email and they're like, oh, I've got something for you. Go to the phone booth. I'm like, cool, it's a friggin' hammer. I appreciate it. Like, Toadette's going to tell me how to use this hammer. And then I already knew because I had been talking to everyone like, oh, cool, I get a hammer that can break things. I'm obviously going to go break a block with this. Like, there's a huge conspicuous block in the minor league locker room. By the time the hammer was on the screen, I was like, I know where I'm going with this right now. Like, it just kind of seemed so easy to sort out, and it was very well telegraphed if you tattled on people, that I was just like, there's no real mystery here for me to figure out. I'm not figuring anything out, because from the point that I knew that Grubba was the bad guy, I was like, all of this is just going to lead me to him, and then I'm going to have to fight him. And sure enough, that's exactly how it plays out. And of course, this being a Mario game, I know that Grubba was somehow going to have the crystal star, which of course he did. And, they start saying like, oh, fighters are going missing. The only thing I didn't expect or didn't suss out on my own was that, Grubba was using the crystal star to drain or absorb the power from fighters.
I'm surprised that's not what tipped you off, because
say,
I thought that's what you would have expected based on the tattling.
See, I didn't expect that he was draining the power from fighters, because at the point that he tattled, I didn't even know fighters were missing.
Oh, good point. What's interesting, real quick, is they only lightly touch on that, or pretty early in the chapter, they mention, is it Prince Mush? How they'd gone missing and had, or I forget what the exact words were, but they did imply that they had gone missing and that they didn't know where they were. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but I think that is a first tip-off that there's something is amiss here. The first official tip-off, if you're not tattling, at least.
Let's real quick. Let's do two things before we go any further with this, because there's one big thing of the first half that we need to mention. Well, the end of the first half, and something that maybe Steve didn't see coming this time around, which is the Yoshi egg, because it actually the color of the Yoshi is different for everyone.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
Well, it depends. I forget what it depends on, but
I've got it right here. So real quick, a couple people in the chat are actually asking, like Strawhead Ninja asks, what color Yoshi Kid did everyone get? And Jacob's wondering, what did we name it as well? So yeah, the color of Yoshi you get is actually dependent on how much time it expired from the time you get a hold of the egg, and I believe when it hatches. So real quick, before I give the full context to this, what color did everyone get? I'll start off. I got an orange Yoshi.
All right. I got blue. Oh, me and Ash got blue.
All right.
I've got green.
Green, okay. Oh. Wow. Dang, you must have been flying, Steve. So green is the best. So if you get a green Yoshi, that's within 0 to 6 minutes. So red is 6 to 9 minutes. A blue Yoshi is 9 to 11 minutes. Orange is 11 to 15 minutes, which is what I had. Then after that, there's pink for 15 to 18 minutes, black for 18 to 19 minutes, white for 19 to 20 minutes, and then after 20 minutes, the order resets apparently. So unless some of you might have taken way longer,
so
actually.
I could have taken it. I was gonna say I don't think I did it in 6 minutes because so while I was doing this, I was downstairs. Our air conditioner went out last week, which is why we're recording this today. So I had the AC guys here. I was actively playing the chapter from like very early in the morning throughout the day, like into the afternoon, and I know that I had to get up and walk away during the chapter.
Right, so you just kept it
I don't
playing.
know if I did that while I had the egg, but there's a high probability.
Maybe it reset because you took so long, and that's just where.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like I think
that
it
could be.
reset. I doubt I
Interesting.
did it in 6 minutes.
So what did you guys name the Yoshi?
I named mine John because then during my stream I named it Ash, so I named it John. Okay.
Oh, nice. I named mine Kirby because the whole thing is he eats everything, and that's how you actually win that fight to get into the major leagues.
It's not,
So I'm like, okay.
it's not a pink Yoshi, though. It could
Yeah,
have
but
been.
he eats everything. He literally inhales all of his everything in front of him. So I don't know. I couldn't think of anything. It was either that or Rush, and I was like, well, he's not a dog, so I'm gonna go
He's
with
not a
Kirby.
Kirby either.
I'm terrible
that's
at
true.
naming things, so I was just like, all right, it was Ash in the stream. Let's have John to, since he's not here.
How about you, Steve?
So this Yoshi has like a little mohawk like tuft of red hair.
Yep.
And so the name that came to my mind was Broshi.
Nice. I love it. Broshi.
Good.
I like it.
I
That's
went Yoshizilla.
You're
Nice.
still up.
Nice. All right.
He's a beast. So how did you guys to step back to the gameplay portion a bit? How did you guys fare during most of these fights? In a general sense, I think the first 10 aren't too bad. I think probably, but how did you guys do?
I sailed through the majority of them, honestly. Like, it was pretty much very easy. I think there was one, I'm trying to think which one it was, but there was one where I think I got dizzied, maybe by the stage falling, like one of the stage props falling.
Right.
And so the enemies just got, like, a bunch of cheap shots on me, and Goombella fainted. But other than that, I sailed through through the rest of the fights. And I was actually going to say, really the only gameplay issue I really have with this chapter, other than it being a little too long, I do think it could have been maybe 7 fights per league or something instead of 10. But the only major gameplay issue I had was with the Iron Adonis twins, because it commits that RPG cardinal sin of having an unwinnable fight without telling you that it's unwinnable. So
I mean, they told you that would kind of ruin the whole thing they're going for.
it is, but and that's true. But you can also like burn all your items on it
Right,
and
you
not
can.
realize that you literally can't win. And that's what I did. I had completely forgotten how this chapter plays out generally. So I forgot that you had
Really?
to lose.
So
I completely forgot that you had to
I figured
lose.
it out part of the way through because I realized nothing I'm doing is making a difference. I can't hurt these guys.
No way.
Right.
Come
What?
on, guys. No way.
I totally, well, I mean, I figured it out once once the POW block didn't work, once, a
Come
few things I
on.
tried didn't work. Then I was like, oh, okay, you're supposed to lose,
No.
but I don't think it's telegraphed as well as it could be, and that's really the only issue I had.
I've never played it before. It's definitely telegraphed. Like, okay, so the first thing I did, again, following the Ash Paulson school of how to play Paper Mario, was I tattled on him.
I did too, yeah.
And she says
Always tattle.
they're made out of the hardest material known to man, and the only thing that can, the
toss-
only way you could hurt them is hitting them into each other.
Right.
And I was like, I have nothing that does that. I'm out of here, and I
Right.
ran.
So
And
yeah,
then as soon as I run, my Broshi hatched out of his egg. And I was
Yeah.
like, he's gonna eat them and he's gonna spit them at each other, and that's how I. And so yeah, I didn't actually I didn't even waste a single item. I tattled. I was like, I got nothing that does what she says I need to do. I'm out of here, and I left. And then
Nice.
they're like, you lose. I was like, oh no.
I think I should have taken it at face value because, of course, I tattled as well, and I just think because there was no reason that you had to lose before, I just didn't take it at face value, and I was like, well, maybe there's something I can do. But I think it was at the point I didn't burn all my items. I think it was when I used Earth Trimmer, and that didn't work.
Right,
I was like,
that's-
okay, well, if Earth Trimmer's not working,
nothing's gonna work.
I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
And then of course the Yoshi hatch is like, okay, I remember this now. But Earth Trimmer was like that was the light bulb moment. I was like, okay, this isn't gonna happen. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. No, I generally agree with you, Ash. I'm not a huge fan of like the RPG, like where you're not aware that you have to lose a fight, you have no choice but to lose. I didn't mind
Right.
in this case though. Maybe it's because I realized at a certain point. Yeah, so I like that plays with the structure of the chapter, it kind of knocks it down a peg, you're not you're not the completely unstoppable Great Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And then then you get your Yoshi, and that's when things really change. And up to this point, I was definitely I think I was mixing my roster a fair amount with the partners, but I definitely leaned more on Yoshi once I had them, because Yoshi's pretty great. And like, although there is one enemy that comes up not too long after this, one of the battles where it works against you. I'm like, oh, I'll just send Yoshi in there to eat up these metal guys and shoot at the other. But these guys have those little like pokers that shoot out like this, and I just immediately annihilated my Yoshi. I'm like, ooh, that's rough.
Yeah, I got that. I got hit by them too. I was like, oh right, whoops.
Yeah,
not good.
We also had the Bowser battle during that point too.
I was actually going to run down with the whole story again, since we've reached Yoshi marks the halfway point. So yeah, as we kind of mentioned throughout this whole thing, you start as you get into the top 10 and go into the major leagues, you start getting these emails. One from X who tells you to go around all these things, and you kind of get this sense of things going on in the background, like missing fighters and checking out Grubba, and there's some sort of mystery going on behind the scenes of the Glitz Pit. At the same time, you're also getting threatening emails saying to stay away, give up, not do these things.
Like all intercat too, like weird typing.
Yeah. And as you go through, you get offered cake, and you can choose to eat it or not. And
did you guys eat it?
I did not eat either of them.
Yeah,
I ate the first. I did not. I ate both.
I did too.
The first one's totally legit. You're fine.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Eat the hell out of that cake. The second one, not bueno.
The first, I came back from with the first one, the first one, and the Koopa's like, "You're a fool, man. That was a good cake." I was like, "Dang it, forgot about that." But yeah, eventually you learn, you make your way to the finals. You face off against Rockhawk, where you find out he's the one that's been sending you the cakes and trying to say stay away and give up and all that stuff.
The second one, by the way, the second one poisons you.
Yes.
Yeah, so it knocked out
it poisons your partner.
I think. Your partner, right.
Yeah. And actually, as you're going,
their body goes numb, which I just find hilarious. He literally drugs you, or tries to.
Mm-hmm. And as I forgot to mention this, as you're going through the major leagues, the matches get interrupted twice. Once by the Adonis twins, and then later on, Bowser shows up after a battle. So you have a out of nowhere Bowser battle. But of course, you finally get through the mystery. You face off against Rockhawk. You defeat Rockhawk, become the champion, and then you actually get behind the scenes and really see what's going on, where you find out that it was Grubba all along, as Steve intonated, that's been sucking the power from the fighters using the Crystal Star, and then you have to defeat him in order to win the chapter.
I said at the beginning, I actually really pretty much loved most of this. I love the development of the mysteries. I think the first time you get a hint that something's wrong, beyond the possible missing fighters, which I didn't think about much, or fighter initially, is when you come across the bandit in the hallway, and he's like, "Hey man, I've heard a bunch of weird stories about this place. You want to hear the rundown of what I know?" And there's
so good.
There's so many mysteries too. I'm like, ooh, all right, I'm intrigued. And what I really love too is, as you just, again, the entire chapter takes place within this one area. But you get access to a little bit more and more and more of it incrementally, and I just love that. It really does feel like you're kind of like uncovering something, like you're like on the cusp of like trying to find out, like getting to the bottom of this, and you're like you're doing espionage. You're in the rafters listening in on what's his name again? Blubba.
Grubba.
Yeah, Grubba.
Did you,
Grubba and
when
Jolene.
you were eavesdropping on him in the thing, and he hears you, did you guys squeak, meow, or I think belch?
Meow.
I squeaked.
Or squeak. No, I squeaked. Yeah.
I belched.
What happened? Do you remember what they said?
What do you say about the belch?
He's like, "Oh, that's just a burping beetle."
Oh my god.
Burping beetle.
I was trying to get caught because I'm like, I want to fight this dude. Like, I just want it to be over. And so I was like, "Burp, Mario, go for it." And he
so
just
funny.
writes it off.
Because like you, Andre, I was so into the mystery, and like I got really into the whole the espionage, the emails. Like I was into like go to the payphone and go pick this package up at the watering hole, the juice shop, and I was really into all that. And so it's just funny how like our experiences could not have been more different in terms of you, Steve, and that's even though I did tattle on Grubba, and I read the same thing you did. And I just didn't put the whole, like, I just figured, well, he's a fight promoter, he's a retired fighter, so, he's just a buff old dude. I guess that, that makes enough sense. Mm-hmm. I didn't really question it that much, but what I'm curious about is, I know you figured that out about Grubba being the ultimate enemy, but did you figure out Jolene before? Did you think she was in league with him? Because I had completely forgotten that she wasn't.
a weird theory about Jolene that in retrospect was really dumb. So there's one thing, and it doesn't make sense until it does. But they mentioned that Jolene disappears a lot, and then someone else mentions that Jolene spends a lot of time in the bathroom. And then later on, someone says the exact same thing about Rockhawk. And I was like, are Jolene and Rockhawk like somehow in cahoots, like working together to, you know, to make fighters disappear? Like, so initially I thought maybe Grubba, despite being like the main villain, was not connected to the disappearance, and maybe Jolene was in league with Rockhawk trying to help him weed out possible strong contenders.
Interesting.
I'm sure, did you any of you guys put together that Jolene was the diva at the juice bar?
Not until actually, I didn't put it together until some NPC mentions it. I don't know who it was that says that, but it was like a sudden light bulb. I was like, oh, she was the diva at the bar. That's so cool.
Same exact hair and everything, yeah.
I did. Yeah. I think I might have thought that, or I think I may have initially thought something when I first went into the bar, because that's the first place I went to, but I immediately forgot about it, and I didn't even make that connection until now. That's really freaking cool. So I don't think I've ever returned to the bar except when I had to. Was there like any story development with her, with the diva?
No, mainly it's just how she pined for the days of Prince Mush being champion.
Oh wow!
And how the great Gonzalez reminds her, like,
fits
the way
in
you
considering
fight.
you find out Prince Mush was her brother.
Oh my God! By the way, Prince Mush, like, how is this guy believable as a super awesome champion
That's a good
fighter?
point.
Among toads, he is the biggest pansy I've ever seen. like
But
he
has
doesn't
the
even look
karate
particular.
gi.
Like Captain Toad would mop the floor with Prince Mush like any day of the week.
Well, to be fair though, I mean, we've never seen Prince Mush fight. He could be one of those. He may not look like much, but maybe he does 99 damage to everything. Every time he attacks.
I am a 1,000,000% weeb, and that is the weebest thing I've ever heard.
Did you forget who you're playing
Frieza
as?
with smaller muscles kind of ideology.
Have you forgotten who you're playing as? Like a middle-aged plumber?
I mean, right?
Well, that's true, but
who's
even,
working for
a middle-aged
pennies?
plumber can stomp out a turtle from time to time.
Right.
So,
one thing I did want to mention, I forgot to mention, this is at the end of the minor leagues, but I do love how when Sir Swoop comes in, you see Jolene go through all the motions with Sir Swoop that she went through with you when you were learning the ropes. And I actually, I wanted to see how far the game would take it in terms of detail, so I actually went to the Glitz Pit to see if it would actually show Sir Swoop fighting during his match, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, he's not fighting. So
I was wondering
unfortunately, they didn't take it that far.
I was wondering that, but I was too lazy to go check myself. But one thing I did notice is that at the least, the battles in the Glitz Pit actually change. So if you come in and out, you'll see different combatants going against each other, which is another just neat detail. What was your favorite part of the mysteries? Like, did any specific moments stand out to you? Like, I remember, not necessarily this time, but I remember when I was younger playing for the first time. And again, I forgot about this until I rediscovered it just now. But when you come across the flattened fighters, like upstairs, like that were under the brick, I think
they kind of seem dead.
Yeah, I'm like, dear God.
And they're the flies are buzzing over them. Right. It's like they really seem like they've just been thrown out.
Yeah, the bandit
killed,
especially.
basically.
He's like barely responsive.
Yeah.
There's a really good bit of storytelling with King K, because before he disappears, he says, "Hey man, I'm retiring," and then he disappears. It's like you don't think about it until, he was one of the missing fighters, and they kind of have this subtle thing where the bandit stops showing up. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
Yeah, but
I like that subtle storytelling.
Yeah, they do a good job of making both of those things be believable too. The bandit, like they constantly say, he's off sneaking around, like he's constantly places he shouldn't be.
Right.
So you can kind of easily, make the leap that, he's just off screen somewhere being Snoopy. You don't think, he's been killed.
Right.
Speaking of the bandits, real quick aside, most annoying battle I had to go through was against the bandits. They stole my freaking life shroom, and I was like, no, come back here. And I beat him up, killed him, but then he uses the life shroom to come back to life. I'm like, well, that item's gone.
They stole my Ultra Shroom. Same thing happened to me, except with my Ultra Shroom, and they just, and then he just ran away. He didn't even use it, he just ran away.
They stole your Ultra Shroom, the one that brings back 50 HP.
Yep, sure did.
Oh God, I put that
Sure
thing in
did.
the stock right away. It's like,
I
that's
know.
for later.
I should have done that, but yeah, I mean, Dave, I'm sure I'll get plenty more. But I'm trying to think of any one moment of the mystery, but for me, it's just the way it all comes together.
Yeah.
I think it takes a real risk by going with the structure that it does, and I can
as
see
clearly
absolutely.
as we're seeing here, half of us like it, half of us don't. Now.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so cool about this chapter is it's not going to play equally well for everyone, obviously, and some people are going to bounce off of it. But I can't think of another RPG that kind of tells its own self-contained story quite like this.
Yeah, it's almost like a meta type thing going on here. Yeah,
right, and is willing to be as repetitive as it is, and kind of challenge you to get into the details. Like as you were saying earlier, Andre, the dialogue changes throughout as Mario or the Great Gonzalez becomes more and more successful. And I think it's like every 5 matches, every NPC says changes. And that's just like, so it's just really, it gets that kind of lived in homey feel that I was mentioning before that it's the way it all comes together. I can't think of one specific moment, but I do know that it was done so well that I had completely forgotten that Jolene was Prince Smush's sister and was actually trying to work against Grubba. I really thought they were in league until the very end.
Yeah, I
just completely forgot.
I had completely forgotten literally everything about that. I legitimately didn't know who was going to be the bad guy, for sure.
Yeah.
I forgot that she was aware of the mystery, but also wasn't in on it. She was trying to get her brother back. And Derek, did you already explain that he was sucking the life force from the fighters? You did, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, I said it and Steve mentioned it before.
Right, okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that playing it again now, like the ultimate wrap up to the mystery, like it wasn't. I was hoping maybe it'd be a little bit more satisfying, but I was still satisfied. I still thought it was fun, like and how like I really had no idea what was going to happen at the end. I just think I was hoping for a little bit more than like a machine sucking energy, but at the same time, I don't know what I would replace it with. So, Derek, real quick, do you remember enjoying it more your first time through a few years ago? Or
yeah, I think I did have fun with it. Just the ridiculousness of it. Plus, you get this extra energy from when you stream it and have chat with you because everybody's like, "Go Great Gonzalez," and
it's funny you mentioned that because you have a crowd
yeah.
in this game often yelling out "Great Gonzalez." When you're going up to the stage.
Continuing the trend of Mario not getting called by his actual name in these chapters.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny, actually.
I think Great Gonzalez is my favorite one so far, though. And I like the fact that because your Yoshi only knows you by that name, he's constantly calling you Gonzalez.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I think it's, again, I'm really surprised with myself that I really did expect to be weighed down by the repetition. But I think, I think that's essential to the narrative working. And I like that it makes it feel like, I think this is probably one of the points in the game where it really most feels like what you would expect from an RPG, or rather, what you expect from a role-playing game. It really does feel like you're playing a role here, and it feels like you're making an impact on what's happening as it's immediately reflected in the world around you. And that's really fun, again, with you being an active participant. And just a few things here I want to touch on. The emails, I love how the emails, again, in this case, have a different, unsettling ringtone to them. I forget what theme it is. Is it the underground theme?
It's like...
Or no, it's World 6, the Ice World from Mario 3.
Yes, that's it.
It's Ice World. That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like that
shows down your spine.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's a theme that, like, back in the day as a kid, even creeped me out. And bringing it back is so perfect for this. I also loved when you finally get into the bathroom and you go into the toilet. You use it as a warp pipe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then also, again, the slow unlocking of parts of the arena, of the whole area, and you end up in the champions room. And I don't know, did anyone else get hung up there? I actually didn't know what to do for a good probably 10 minutes when you had to work your way up to the vent.
Oh
yeah,
man, that was.
I figured.
Go ahead, Derek.
No, I was just gonna say, since I played it recently, I remembered
Right,
what
yeah.
I needed to do.
Yeah,
I knew.
For me. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve. Yeah, you were good first.
No worries. For me, it felt pretty obvious. Like I saw the stack of presents, and I saw like.
Well, I knew
there's
where to
obviously-
go. I just forgot about the hammer. Yeah, I immediately went to the vent, but I totally forgot I had the hammer move to spin it down.
See,
I did
what
try
happened-
Flurry first.
Oh, see, I did
okay.
too. What happened with me was I tried Flurry, and then I tried just whacking it with the hammer, and when you whack it with the hammer, it moves.
Oh, I missed that.
And so then I was like, I just do the new move I have with the hammer.
Right.
And so
I
that
skipped that
was
middle
kind of my
part.
signifier. Now, what I will say did trip me up was I went through the duct, and then there was another one on the other side, and for some reason, I don't know why it didn't register that I had to do the same thing again immediately. So I just stood there for a few minutes thinking like, okay, there's a way out of this. and then I was like, duh, this is the exact same texture that was on the wall in the room. Like it's another air duct I can knock out, but for some reason it did not click right away.
Right. I think I tried flurry first, but then I just went straight to the spin hammer thing. I didn't even. I just was like, oh, okay. Well, if it's not that, it's got to be this new move I just learned, and it was. So for whatever reason, but one of the little details I like is that every one of the 7 mysteries of the Glitz Pit that the thief talks to the bandit talks to you about, they can all be explained. Like they're all explained by the mystery of what's going on in different ways.
Do you remember any one of those stand out to you specifically?
I mean, well, the ghostly voices in the sometimes you hear the voices of fallen warriors in the champions room.
Oh, right.
Well, that's because that's exactly, we were just talking about that. And the lights coming out from underneath the Glitz Pit doors when nobody else is there. Well, that's because Grubba's using the machine.
Oh, that's
like,
so interesting. Yeah, I wanted to go back and read up on those mysteries again to see what they actually were. That is really cool. See, this is more satisfying than Lost for me. I love that. These are all reasonable answers. That's really cool. I really love what they did here. So that was just a fun. Okay. Yeah.
There is one thing I want to ask everyone. What partner did you guys have with you when you went through the toilet?
Flurry.
I probably had Yoshi, I think.
Do you have to ask? Goombella, obviously.
Well, yeah, I had Goombella too. And I was curious because Goombella talks about how disgusting it was going through those pipes.
Yeah.
Flurry's like, we are never doing that again.
Yeah. That threw me. Like, I remember, and like Ash was talking about putting together the mysteries, I was like, oh, this is the man-eating toilet. Like, this is...
Right. That's,
that's
the man-eating
I thought
toilet.
it was weird that he mentioned that initially, because I was like, why do we care? Like, what is the importance of knowing? Because there's a lot of funny stories about like scary bathrooms in Japanese media.
Majora's Mask has the hand guy too, the hand in the toilet.
Yeah, Majora's Mask has the hand guy. There's stories, there's popular stories about ghosts inhabiting bathrooms and stuff in a lot of anime. So I thought it was maybe just another kind of throwaway like funny thing that Nintendo did, like haha, scary toilet. And I'm like, oh, we actually use that to get to our match, which I thought was pretty clever.
And another really cool little detail too is if you happen to be standing in front of the door when the bouncer comes in to take you to your match, Mario will like flip out and jump out of the way, which I thought was a cool little detail.
I was going to bring up though, I do love how there's a slight delay between when you check in for a match and when the bouncer actually rolls into the room.
Yeah,
it's just a super small thing, but it kind of just makes it feel a little bit more legitimate, a little bit more realistic. Also, I'm sure you guys know this. Well, maybe the terminals are Game Boy Advances.
Of course.
Yep. And each one is a different color Game Boy Advance, depending on which rank you are. So, that was neat. And, I was going to mention something else, but I forgot. So, also, speaking of retro throwbacks, I love... Did you guys talk to the Hammer Brother between every round?
Yeah, his whole story about his granddad making the hammer.
I missed that.
His granddad is from World 7-1, the original Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I've completely missed that.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, I thought it was a really neat detail.
It's really... And then there's also a whole nother story that's going on with 2 NPCs in the lobby. There's a whole love story. Like, the Toad girl is in love with the Toad boy in the lobby. And she's like, oh, he's just so... He's so responsible and so straight-laced, and the way he just says, welcome to the Glitz Pit. Oh, I just sigh thinking about him. And then just their story develops throughout, too. There's
only one other chapter I can think of that might come close to rivaling this, but again, that's future spoilers, so we won't get into it.
I think I might know what you're talking about from what I remember, so we'll see.
But yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, it's just a really, really unique setup for a chapter. In fact, Straw Hat Ninja here says, even having a fighting tournament in general is such a good idea. And this is kind of like Mario's version of like a Fight Club or I guess an official like MMA style tournament. And yeah, it's kind of neat to actually incorporate the actual like fighting mechanics, the combat system into the story, which is something you don't really see too often like this directly. So that's kind of fun. And how they just play with that. So I think, the slow burn of this whole story is really fun. How it starts off, for me, seemingly pretty typical until, like, you get to the mystery part. Obviously, I knew there was a mystery coming. I just forgot what it was and when. I knew who it involved, but I forgot to what degree. So yeah, it was really fun to rediscover that stuff for me. So I guess, do we have any other final thoughts on Chapter 3 we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, because I gotta say, I feel like I had more trouble with the Coopinator than I did with either Rockhawk or Bubba.
For sure.
Definitely.
Grubba.
Yep, same.
Definitely.
Rockhawk and Grubba were stupid easy.
Yeah.
Like, I was expecting them to be far more difficult. I didn't think Rockhawk would be too hard just because he seems like a paper champion. With all his dirty tricks and everything. So I wasn't expecting him to be a super huge challenge, but I definitely expected Grubba to be way more difficult to deal with than he was. He was ridiculously simple.
He was.
I used Mario. I had the Shrink Stomp.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I used that on him immediately. And so that cut his attack in half, I want to say. And then from there, I just used multi-bounce on him with both Goombella and Mario. And I think he didn't even last 3 full turns. Like, he was just gone. So it was a really easy fight. I mean, I used a ton of flower points to get through it, but I mean, it paid off. I think he was doing maybe 1 or 2 damage at best when he was shrunk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I thought Rockhawk was really easy. I found Grubba I actually found to be reasonably difficult. I think that I didn't have the Stomp badge equipped. That might have been one of the ones I had to sell off when I was trying to pay.
Oh no! Why would you sell that?
Oh no.
Well, I'm the guy who's going through on a pure badge run. All right, so I'm.
That makes it
Which
less
means
sense.
you should
You need
never
all the
sell a
badges.
badge.
But yes, I guess. But yeah. So the Coopinators, they were by far the hardest battle I think the entire time. I think I even lost to them once, if not twice. There was definitely a point that said I got downgraded a rank, which is pretty harsh. But real quick, I actually didn't mind the special conditions. I thought that would be more for me. I mean, they are random and they do change if you redo a match. I also think they're random, but they do change if you redo a match. So maybe I just had better setups, but I didn't mind them in general. I thought they were actually kind of like a fun spin on the usual combat. And it did make.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
I got 4 in a row where I had to appeal 3 times. So.
Yeah, that'd be annoying. For me, it was a pretty good mix, actually. I don't think I had any back-to-backs that were the same.
Yeah, I know with the Coopinator, I lost my first try because my condition was that I couldn't use flower points at all. And I was like, well, that leaves special moves. I'm screwed. Like,
Interesting. I actually never got that condition.
Yeah, he has pretty decent defense. So. Like, my normal attacks just didn't do a whole lot against him, and he deals damage like crazy. He has that move where he can go straight through both of you, and I think if you don't guard it, does 6. And then if you guard it, you're still taking 5, which is like if you're doing a badge run like Andre, that's half your HP right there.
Yeah, that's why these battles are so much. Right. Yeah, that's why I think I'm having so much more trouble here.
Yeah, so he was definitely difficult, but then the second time. I got probably my favorite condition, and that was make sure you use a special move at least once. And I was like, done. I can manage that. So he was still a hard fight, but I agree with Derek that he's easily the most difficult opponent in this chapter.
Yeah, my curse that I initiated at the beginning of chapter 2 at Rogueport was still in effect by the time I got to my fight with Grubba. It had an attack boost for one attack, and it was just done. Like
wow!
It was well worth spending that 50 coins for that.
Oh, so. I think mine's worn out. I didn't see that at all during any of my fights, so I need to go back and pay.
Yeah, that's
more.
a really good point. I was gonna say I know that for some of my fights in chapter 3, it was still working, but it does it tell you that it's over or?
It does.
I think it does. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I might have missed it then because I haven't had a curse effect in a while now.
So
yeah, it does tell you specifically.
Straw Hat Ninja is asking, do you have the Lucky Day or Pretty Lucky badges yet, Andre? That will help. I forget. Do you remember what those? Does anyone remember which ones those are?
I actually have Pretty Lucky. Pretty Lucky makes it so on occasion enemies will completely miss you.
I think I do have that equipped then, and or if not, then have the one where if you're in danger, they might miss. And then
that's the one I have.
And then that was Pretty Lucky? Was that? Or no?
Yeah, Pretty Lucky.
Okay, which one's the Lucky Day then?
Lucky Day means it happens more often.
Okay. I don't know. I'll have to check. I'll have to double check which ones I have. The ones that I'm really relying on right now, are I think I might be using a health boosting item, or if not that, actually I don't think I am. I'm using a flower point boosting badge right now.
Okay.
Because 5 flower points is unworkable. I needed at least 10, but I'm still sticking with my badge only thing for now. Then I'm using the auto refills where you can regain hearts or flowers each turn, or not each turn, but every few turns. And I have that equipped on the partners as well. And trying to remember what else I have equipped. I'll have to look at the full list, but yeah, those are the main ones I'm really using. So
I have my full list here. I have Piercing Blow, which gets through all defense. So if anything has high defense,
wow.
I can.
Where do you find
take 'em
that
out.
one? I don't even have that one.
I think I might have bought it.
Okay.
I think you
I'm not
buy it at
sure.
the badge shop in Rogueport. I bought that one too.
Yeah, it's
Oh
really
damn! I need
useful.
that one.
Yeah, I had that one since chapter 2, I think, or chapter.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Then I got the Power Bounce, which is just bounce and jump until you miss, which is always nice. Pretty lucky, so they miss every so often. I saved up. I used my star points so I could get the quick change. I believe it was.
Right.
Or maybe I got a quick change somewhere else. But basically, it means I can swap partners without having to lose a turn to it. So always nice. And then damage dodge, which means if you properly defend, it'll lower the attack by 1.
I have that one too. Yeah. So.
Nice. I've been relying heavily on quick change. That's 7 of my badge points permanently go to
Same
that.
here. Oh,
because
absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
Quick change
same.
is
It's
essential.
not leaving.
So
Because
useful.
that's why
it's just essential.
I'll bring in Goombella, Tattle, then roll her out and bring in someone else. So yeah, quick change is. I don't know how you play the game without quick. Do any of us not have quick change equipped?
I don't.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
Dang.
I didn't even know it was a thing.
Maybe that's why Steve's not enjoying the battle. They found them really repetitive this time.
That could be.
I think what you need to do, I forget where the quick change is, Steve, but you might be able to go to the underground of Rogueport and talk to the guy you trade in star points for badges.
That's where it is.
Oh, that would make
Yeah,
sense.
you
'cause
trade in
I
star
literally,
pieces.
I met that guy one time and I was like, I don't have any stars.
Yeah, I would recommend doing that.
Talk to
first
him again.
thing, Chapter 4, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like I need to do that.
Really useful badges in there.
Jacob Tucker has a question who asks, Prince Mush was a huge missed opportunity. They should have made him either an optional partner or an optional boss, or both. Instead, you'd literally never see him again. I actually, I never
Good.
thought about that before, but I kind of love that idea. So I guess Steve doesn't.
I do too. I was actually going to mention that
Yeah.
before you did. I was like, you know what? That's a great point, Jacob.
is.
Like an optional
Super
boss, especially given what Steve was saying earlier about how he doesn't look like he's anything to worry about. He doesn't look like he could be a top ranked fighter. But that would be like the perfect, again, weeb type thing where it's like, yeah, he doesn't look like anything. He's small and skinny and almost like Cloud, right? He's got those thin arms, but
Yeah, it should have been like
he
an optional
somehow,
fight, like an optional
yeah,
final
he
battle.
should have been like the super boss.
Yeah.
Like he should have been
Oh,
the
yeah.
hardest boss in the game. I think that would have been really cool.
That'd be
Maybe,
really neat.
maybe he's not that impressive because he was still beaten by Grubba, and we beat Grubba.
That's actually a good
Well, I
point.
think
True.
he was
we beat
forced.
Grubba with Mush's power.
yeah.
So-
Well, and yeah. Well, also, doesn't some NPC say though that he didn't actually lose? He was forced to throw the fight. Essentially, something happened.
Oh, really?
And Prince Mush was forced to throw the fight.
I'm
I think
not
it's
sure.
implied that he drugged Prince Mush.
There is so much to this chapter.
Right?
I love it.
I love it.
I hate everything about Prince Mush. His character design. His name is friggin' Mush.
That's true.
There's nothing cool about this dude. I'm such a character design driven person, and he is the antithesis of everything I like.
That's funny.
That's funny. I guess, how would you guys rank, now that we're at 3 chapters, we just finished chapter 3, how would you rank them so far? Because for me, this is actually where Thousand Year Door starts to come alive for me. This is where the game really starts to take on, it really starts to come into its own. And, especially with the narrative. I feel like chapters 1 or 2 are pretty light on that in general. This is where it really starts, because I am one who loves mystery, especially when it pays off. And chapter 3 is the first one that really introduces a good mystery, I think. And one that, it has a clearer through line through the entire chapter. So yeah, this is where for me, Thousand Year Door really starts to pick up. And I really can't wait to get into some of the later chapters where we have even more mysteries. To answer my own question, my rank would actually be the inverse as to the order you go through them. Right now it's 3, 2, 1. 3's my favorite, 1's my least favorite.
Nice. I think I found myself agreeing with Straw Hat Ninja, who just said I would rank them 3, 1, 2. I think that's pretty much where I'm at, and that doesn't mean that I highly disliked Chapter 2. I still liked it, but I think overall, just taken it in a general sense, my order is the same. It's Chapter 3, then the first chapter, then 2.
I'm pretty much the same. I mean, I have my gripes with Chapter 3, but it is where the game really starts having its own identity and really picking up and having some interesting things there. Maybe it's not the best upon replay or when you know what's happening, and there is that repetitious element, but it's something unique and fun with some of the best characters up to this point. And I think that's why 3, despite my issues, is still the best chapter up to this point.
Here comes
For
Steve.
me, yeah, for me it's 2, 1, 3.
Okay, wow.
And I think 2, while it can be a little tedious, like trudging through the tree, I think that they do enough original stuff in that chapter, and the aesthetically, the area is my favorite so far. 1 kind of feels, like it's an introduction to the Mario world, and I just did not like the repetitious nature of 3, combined with the fact that I was being someone who came in with zero knowledge, was able to spoil the mystery.
Yeah,
I spoiled the whole story of the chapter in one simple action.
Do you
and
think,
that kind of...
I know it's impossible to say for sure, but do you think your experience might have been better had you not tattled on Grubba?
It could have been, but I think Nintendo, and maybe it's just because I've played so many damn Nintendo games, but I think there are certain like tropes or signposts, methods of signposting that they use in games like these that there's still a good chance I might have figured it out without that tattle. Because there's a point too where Grubba's like, "Hey, what do you know about the crystal stars?" to Jolene, and that to me again would have been like a super obvious, like,
Right.
okay, he's got it. Like, so I'm not sure, but I think it would have been better. Yes, I'm not confident that I wouldn't have still figured it out. It's really hard to say what you would have done in a scenario where that's opposite of your experience. So, yeah, but even then, I feel like a lot of the points Derek touched on are still really valid criticisms of this chapter. Like you're just grinding these fights out, one after the other, and I'm someone who loves the battle mechanics of this game and takes the opportunity for gratuitous violence when I have it, but it just felt like there were too many of them. Like I would have honestly cut the number of fights in half, 5 in minor, 5 in major, and just get that out of the way, because there was nothing special about them that moved the story forward. And as far as the emails were concerned, there were only about 2 or 3 of them that were truly important to moving the narrative along. So I think you could have easily truncated this chapter and still gotten the same result without fatiguing the player as much.
So I totally get that. I totally see where you're coming from. I guess for me, since I did enjoy it, there were a couple times where I feel like it maybe was going on a little bit too long. I feel like the length is also kind of essential to the chapter working at all. It obviously didn't work for you on really any level, so I see why you'd want it truncated. But for me, like, you kind of need that like lengthier structure in order for the slow burn of these mysteries to really pay off, and for you to think that there's nothing really amiss here until there is, and then that just kind of comes out of left field largely, and that's when things really pick up. So I feel like if it were 5 and 5, I feel like that would just feel a little bit more
a little too short.
Yeah, less impactful, because it would just feel like it's happening immediately,
And maybe there could be a middle ground, like maybe, as I said earlier, maybe it could be 7 and 7 or something, because I do think there's something to be said for maybe it does go on just a little bit long. But I also agree with you. I was thinking the same thing, Andre. Like, if it's too short, you don't really get the chance for the mystery to really develop and for things to really just kind of settle in long enough for them to get really interesting. And what I just realized talking about this is it's funny that the chapter, it's about the Glitz Pit, it's about this fight pit, it's about the fights, but really, if you think about it, it's really about everything except the fights.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. It's like, ostensibly on the surface, it's about going through these fights, and it's about these fighters and what all the different battles, but really, it's everything outside of the fights that really matter most.
It really is like Fight
details
Club.
outside of that, and and I just love that. It's really about everything except the fights that it seems to be about on the surface, and I think that's just what I love about it. It really plays with your expectations.
It's the most character-driven chapter by far up to this point.
Yeah. And just playing it again really reinforced how much I truly love this chapter.
I prefer the next chapter to this one. I remembered
Future
it and what
spoilers.
it's going to be in for. I'm not saying what it's about.
We'll
I
see.
just
Maybe
really,
you'll feel differently, Derek, playing it again.
maybe I haven't played it yet, so I might change. But from my memory, 4 is a really good chapter.
I actually don't remember. I could probably figure out if I sat down to think about it, but I don't want to. I've been actively trying to avoid thinking too much ahead. I'll feel it creeping in my mind at times. Like, no, get out of there, thought. I don't want to know what happens. I don't want to try to figure it out.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm going to make a prediction. I think Steve's going to come back next time really enjoying Chapter 4. Chapter 5, maybe, but it's hard to say for that one. That was kind of a toss-up, but I think you'll really enjoy Chapter 4.
Oh man, I can't wait.
It's funny. I have
Hopefully I
no
don't set
memory
your
at
expectations,
all
though.
of Chapter 4, and I'm not going to mention anything about it, but I have no memory of all really about it, so I'm looking forward to that. And really quick, I want to address something that Justin Holland has been saying since last week as well. We definitely see your question, but Platinum Chrome kind of hit on it. We can't talk about the story theme of the entire game yet, because we're only at Chapter 3, and Steve hasn't played it yet, so we don't want to spoil anything. We don't want to... we don't want to talk about the overall picture just yet. So we see your question. We're not ignoring you, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, definitely ask us. Definitely remind us. Probably in our final episode, week 4, I think. That would be fun to talk about the story as a whole and how it all comes together, and like if there is a deeper meaning to any of this. If there is or not, I literally don't remember. there's a fair amount I've forgotten, which I'm actually really happy about. I wish I could selectively choose to forget things. What was that movie with Jim Carrey? Ironic, I forget the name.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I want that.
Great movie.
Go back in, delete Resident Evil 4, Super Mario 64.
I could never. You know what? I could never delete Super Mario 64. Like, I think there's something, a magical quality to having played that game for the first time.
At the time it came out. I agree. No, absolutely. Sure. I think, I kind of cared. Yeah, I think some of those games, like, you had to be there at the time, at the age we were probably at. Like, the conditions are perfect for that game to be as amazing as it was. So, but...
Right, like,
if
I remembered Odyssey and somehow forgot 64, I'd be like, this is crap.
That's a good point, exactly.
Yeah.
That would be the concern.
Well, either way, we're a little off topic at this moment.
Yeah,
but...
sorry.
Yeah, we're seeing some people in the chat. Everyone, wow, it seems like it's almost unanimous between Straw Hat Ninja, Platinum Chrome, and Jacob Tucker saying either it's great or that it's their favorite chapter. So I think I actually may know what it is now, and if it is what I'm thinking of, it might be my favorite too. So, but we'll see if that lives up. Because unfortunately, I may actually I don't want to say anything. So yeah. Anyways,
all right.
Guys, any final thoughts on Chapter 3 before we wrap it up here?
I do have one last thing to say, and that is something I realized only upon finishing Chapter 3 and kind of starting, getting the wrap up as what happened throughout the chapter. And what I think is so cool is that this chapter has nothing to do with the X-Nauts. Like, it is believable that they are doing their own thing. They're executing their own search for the Crystal Stars. The villains are in the background doing their villainous stuff, but this is its own self-contained story, and it's. I think it's cool that it's not like the X-Nauts are in every single chapter. They're at every turn. They're just doing their own thing. They don't really know what's going on, and they're trying to figure it out too. And this is just its own self-contained thing. They're not the villains in this chapter, and I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. I guess,
Absolutely.
I think Chapter 1 had that too, but as an introductory chapter, that kind of makes sense. Whereas you're...
Well, that was kind of before you knew more of what the X-Nauts were.
Whereas they were properly introduced in Chapter 2 and had a sizable role by the end, but you're totally right. They're completely missing from Chapter 3 too.
Right.
As far as I know,
and actually, on that note, I had completely forgotten about Bowser
crashing
the party.
That was a surprise.
Completely forgot about that. And even Goombella says, like, when you tattle on him, he's like, whoa, Bowser's here? Where did he come from? This is crazy. And so I just think it's cool that, like, these characters are very believably doing their own thing in the background, and it's easy to reason out that after we see Bowser in Petalburg that he hears, as he tells Mario, I heard there's some mustachioed prick, competing in the Glitz Pit, so I decided to crash the party, and here he is. Right. And I just think it's cool that they have their own stuff going on in the background.
Yeah, and I love that they play with the flow of the chapter. Like, I mean, I really like being surprised, especially in positive, fun ways. And that was definitely this whole chapter is built around surprises. Like, they're doing something constantly. Well, at least once you get past the first 10 matches, that kind of catches you off guard, and that's just really fun.
Yeah.
So. I think that's why. I think that's partly why I really like the Paper Mario games. Is the chapters, maybe not to the same extent that Chapter 3 is, but they are all largely self-contained to a degree. They all have like their own separate stories, and that's really fun. Each one does feel very unique. It's not, there is a larger story continuing through most of these, but on a more granular level, each one is its own story too, and that's enjoyable.
Yeah.
All right.
But there's going to be a lot of exploration to do in Rogueport when we get back there, and that we have that hammer and Yoshi.
I hope your AC doesn't break again, Steve. You're going to need all the time.
Yeah, no joke. I hope so too.
Right.
That was a long hot day.
Yeah, I believe it.
Oh, speaking of Yoshi, that reminds me. I do wish, and I wrote this down. I wish you could interact with things on Yoshi. You can't, and because I want to use him to get around fast.
The best part about Yoshi is the fact that we finally have this game's version of the spin from Paper Mario 64. They can actually run, basically. But it's annoying that you have to hop off in order to go through a door or do anything. And it does annoy me that it took until Chapter 3 to get this ability, whereas I believe you were able to spin from the get-go in Paper Mario 64, if not really early on, which you could then extend later into the game. So yeah, I did miss the ability to go quicker up until now. Yeah. So I do like having Yoshi, and he's probably going to be my most equipped character now, partner, just so I can get through the environment faster.
Yeah, I was waiting on Yoshi before I took on all the Trouble Center stuff, just so I could get to places a lot quicker.
Yeah, I actually forgot about Yoshi too. I think I knew he was in the game, but I think I forgot he was introduced in this chapter and that he had the run ability. So, and the hover ability, or hover jump.
Float.
Yeah. Anyways, I think with that, we're at the end of our Chapter 3, Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door discussion, Chapters 2 and 3 for Week 2. Thank you so much for watching. As a reminder, if you'd like to back us on Patreon at the $5 Game Club VIP level, you get access to all kinds of bonuses, including the live recording of this discussion where you can interact with us during it, as you may have seen during this very episode. You can also get access to the final episode early, the final edited version. You can also get... I always forget all the benefits we have.
The streams we do with one of us.
The exclusive streams where we go through the chapters one by one, and there are even more. There's probably an image on the screen right now that can better explain than I can. So check it out. There's a link in the description below if you want to consider supporting us for just $5 a month. And with that, we will catch you next time for Week 3, which should encompass Chapters 4 and 5. So if you're following along, play up to the end of Chapter 5, the end of Chapter screen, and we will pick up our conversation at that point. Thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.